This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Hello and welcome to Canada. Yes, we are back in Montreal and couldn't be happier. 19 minutes and 48, 47, 46 seconds until this race gets underway. It's round 9 of the Formula One World Championship. And Max Verstappen may be starting on pole, but it should be a fascinating race because many people are out of position after the rain of yesterday and the cold temperatures. I'm delighted to say the sun is shining. And Jack Nicholls and F1 reserve driver for Williams, Jack Aitken. This is a good day for racing.
Looking forward to this, Jenny. It's always a bit of fun, Canada. I like the track. It's been on the calendar since 1978. The walls are very close. Mistakes are punished. It's a little bit of a sort of odd track on the calendar and a little bit quirky. So I like it. Verstappen on pole, Alonso second, Sainz third, Hamilton fourth. You've got Leclerc starting down at the back of the grid. Perez is in the midfield. There's lots of ingredients, as you say, for it to be pretty interesting.
And a short dash, Jack Aitken, down to the first turn, which always gives us high drama.
Yes, it's one of the trickier first corners on the F1 calendar because as you go into turn 1, it's not a straight actually, it's a kink to the right, you brake, turn left into turn 1 and straight into the tight right-hander of turn 2. So in previous years we've seen collisions even before the first corner as people get squeezed on that kink into the first braking zone, and then you have the compression of all the cars diving into turns 1 and 2 trying to fight for position, people running wide, coming back on the track at turn 2. So it's a potential flashpoint, that's for sure.
Yes, it certainly is. Lots of flags fluttering to my right. There's still quite a strong gusty breeze every now and then, which is just lurking to catch the odd driver or two out. But the grandstands are utterly packed with people delighted to see that racing is back. We've had 2 years where COVID has meant that we couldn't come here, but we are back, and Lance Stroll for Aston Martin gets to go out in front of his home fans again. And for the first time, Nicholas Latifi at Williams gets to drive in front of a home crowd. So 2 Canadians. Unfortunately, they're kind of languishing a little bit at the back due to, well, the Williams being the Williams and the Aston Martin having a rubbish day yesterday. But at the front, Nicholls, I will call you for the benefit of everybody at home today, and Aitken, I will call you Aitken, so excuse the formality or informality. 34 points. Leclerc now trails Verstappen in the championship, and actually it's Perez in second place who trails Verstappen by 21 points. Leclerc from the back of the grid where I'm standing right now in the Ferrari has to get clean and has to get forward.
I think that Leclerc's progress today is going to be the sort of important one. I think there'll be a lot of distractions with very interesting things happening over the rest of the Grand Prix. Verstappen should be able to reasonably control it at the front, but if Sainz can get ahead of Alonso, he could be in the fight. Hamilton in the race pace might be doing okay, but Leclerc's progress is what is going to sort of minimize his championship loss to Verstappen today, because 34 points is a lot. Obviously, if Verstappen finishes ahead, it will increase. So it's to what point will that increase before Leclerc can try and get back on top of things at Silverstone in a couple of weeks' time?
Yeah, not long until Silverstone. Can't wait for that as well. National Anthem's coming up in just a moment's time. I'm going to start the grid walk in a second after that's finished. But
and you know
I'm
what,
right
Jenny?
at the back of the grid.
Just thinking about it, because we're about to have the Canadian National Anthem. Formula One's been latched into Canada since the late 70s, but it's still trying to break America. It's really interesting, that difference.
Yeah, well, the Canadian National Anthem hasn't changed at all since then, you'll be pleased to know. It's still O Canada, and this is Melissa Bennett going to be singing it for us.
Oh Canada, terre de nos aïeux, ton front est ceint de fleurs en glorieux, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Melissa Bedard with Oh Canada, the crowd on their feet, waving their caps around. Henry Moran, I hope it's exciting where you are. It's the one-day international, England versus the Netherlands.
And it has just concluded, Jenny. England winning by 6 wickets with 29 balls remaining. They take an unassailable 2-0 lead in this series. David Milan and Moeen Ali seeing England over the line. It's been another memorable day here in Amstelveen. England winning by 6 wickets.
Thanks so much. Now, is that a sign? That is the question. England beat the Netherlands, and at the front of this grid, Max Verstappen will start in pole position. Fernando Alonso right next to him in second. His best qualifying since Germany 2012 in the Alpine, and then lurking behind in weight, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, and Lewis Hamilton. His best qualifying so far this season starts in 4th place in that Mercedes. So at the back of the grid, let me walk you through. We have the number 22 car of Yuki Tsunoda. He changed his power unit, so he gets penalised. And he will start just behind the car of Charles Leclerc, the man who needs to claw back points in the championship, the Ferrari man. And just next to his car, Jack Nicholls, it says, On se souviendra, Gilles Villeneuve, 1950 to 1982. And this is the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Everybody paying their respects, Jack, this year.
Yeah, well, it was the first ever Grand Prix at this circuit was won by Gilles Villeneuve in 1978, the coldest Formula One Grand Prix in history. And this is the 40th anniversary of his death. He was killed in 1982 in an accident in qualifying in Zolder. So a notable anniversary for Gilles Villeneuve, and a Ferrari driver in the famous number 27, and many people liken Charles Leclerc to Gilles Villeneuve in that sort of extravagant and flamboyant way that he drives the car.
Well, Yuki Tsunoda just passes to my right with a burgundy baseball cap on, and then to my left is Charles Leclerc as he just puts a little towel over his head. It's relatively warm here today, certainly compared to yesterday. The temperatures have shot up. He's got the number 16 on his back, almost like a football shirt, but he's in his red overalls. Then if I walk forward, Nicholas Latifi, his number 6 Williams car is waiting to go. A disappointing qualifying for him, but let's see what he can do in the race. He'll go out and savour driving in front of his home fans. He's not had the chance to do that before, as the crowd wave at Charles Leclerc, just beckoning him to wave back at them. Lance Stroll just to my left, another Canadian, as he jumps over in his overalls into the pit wall and the lane over there, and his car is just having a little bit of final work done to it, an umbrella over the cockpit. Jack Aiken, it does get warm, doesn't it, for the drivers, with the car just sitting on the grid, baking in the sunshine?
Yeah, you'll see a lot of the mechanics trying to cover the cockpit with an umbrella just to try and prevent some of the heat soak that goes on the grid. But, you know, you've got 2 layers of fireproof equipment while you're stood there, and, you know, you have to be there for a lot of the procedures for the national anthem, so on and such forth. And it's a lot of time standing around in the baking sun, so they'll be doing the best they can to stay cool. And collected.
Certainly are. Well, there's an umbrella just being held over Sebastian Vettel's head as he puts on his balaclava. Another layer in the sunshine. A disappointment for Aston Martin, because they didn't get their tyres into the right window yesterday. At one point, Nichols, they were, you know, really at the pointy end, and now both cars starting near the back. Vettel starting in P16.
Yeah, they didn't raise their tyre pressures enough, didn't lower their tyre pressures enough, is what they felt, because they did well in practice, but thought qualifying was going to be similar, so changed the tyre pressures a little bit, and then it turned out with all the other cars lapping around, the track conditions changed quicker than free practice, when it was just them basically going around for a lot of it. So a real disappointment for them, because they had a chance of being top 5, honestly. Like, if you said to me before qualifying yesterday, who's finishing ahead, the Haas or the Aston Martins, I'm saying the Aston Martins all day long, and it didn't work out that way.
Just goes to show what we know, right? Right, next up on the grid, it is Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri, and he is just doing some strengthening work with his physio and some reactionary work. So he's standing legs apart by about a foot. He's got the number 10 on his back, and he's holding his hands just underneath on top of his physio's hands. Well, his physio has a little tennis ball and he's taking turns to drop one hand, then the other, then both sometimes, and Gasly has to react. And Aiken, it is a reactionary game, the start of this race, which is just 10 minutes away now here in Montreal.
I like that game. I've played that one before. You always get a large variety of warm-ups, don't you, from the drivers? I find it quite entertaining to watch what people do. Football, cricket, dropping balls from hands.
What did you do?
I like to do a combination of lots of embarrassing leg movements and hands.
Like Ministry of Silly Walks.
Yeah, it wasn't graceful. Anyway, yes, reactions, very important. Nowadays, with the amount of technology that goes on, there's the added pressure that actually, in the debriefs, at least the ones that I've been in, you will always get the driver's reaction to the lights now, because we have that data to see when the lights turn off and the start of the race is given, and when the driver drops that clutch paddle for that initial hit of power. And the engineers will judge you for that. You know, you have to be very quick. You're talking 0.2 of a second, the reaction time for these guys. So, and with the short run to turn one, it's even more important.
How was your start?
0.19.
Oh, not bad.
Probably.
Oh, okay, that's good.
No, I'm just better than whatever I said before. Yeah.
Right, Lando Norris starts a little bit further down on the grid. He's 14th. Then I go past Sergio Perez, had a dodgy qualifying yesterday, so he'll be in 13th. Alex Albon in the Williams in 12th. Then it's Valtteri Bottas just going past his car right now. 1 minute I've been told. All right, I've got 1 minute till I have to get off the grid. I better shuffle through this. I'm never going to make it to the front. I apologise. So in the top 10 you have Zhou, Ricciardo, Russell. Went brave yesterday, tried to get through on a slick. That's like a racing tyre rather than a wet weather tyre, and it didn't pay off for him. But he'll start in P8 in that Mercedes, and then he'll be next to Esteban Ocon in the blue Alpine, and then it'll be the two Haas cars. They were remarkable, Jack Nicholls, yesterday. They've managed to qualify and lock out the third row of the grid. Schumacher in P6, his best ever qualifying, and Kevin Magnussen alongside him in P5.
Yeah, it equalled their best ever qualifying performance, Haas, when they were fifth and sixth on the grid in Australia a few years ago with Magnussen and Grosjean. A really strong performance, and they just got it hooked up. They looked okay over the course of the weekend, but suddenly in the wet conditions, Magnussen and Schumacher came through, and as you say, it was Schumacher's best ever qualifying, sixth on the grid, but it was an impressive sixth on the grid as well, because Magnussen, I kind of expect a bit of magic here and there from the Dane, but maybe wouldn't have from Schumacher. So it was cool to see.
8 minutes to go until the start of the race. I'm now off the grid, having been told that I needed to get off the grid. Just walking past Fernando Alonso's garage with the Alpine. He will start second. But on the second row, it's Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton was delighted yesterday, Jack Aitken. He was overjoyed with a fourth place start. A big grin on his face. What can he do from fourth here in Montreal?
Yeah, he was almost suspiciously pleased with it, wasn't he? It was quite a rare thing to see a racing driver happy with fourth, but such as the struggles that they've had recently, he was, overjoyed with that. And I think today, it's hard to know what the approach is going to be, because the race pace of the Mercedes wasn't amazing on Friday. You know, I think he's put that Mercedes more or less where it should be, or even at the upper end of that sort of area. So he might be looking more at his mirrors today. Having said that, he's got Magnussen and Schumacher behind him, also not cars that we'd expect to be up there. It's quite a jumbled up grid, so he's going to have to be opportunistic and just do what we know that he's quite good at, and stay calm and play the long game in this race.
Oh, do you think he's going to play the long game, not just get his elbows out and go straight into it from the start?
Yeah, he's been quite circumspect this year, and I think that's probably going to continue. I don't think he needs to get too crazy in the first corners. Alonso is going to back things up a little bit if form is anything to go by, so there will be opportunities later on.
Love that. Right, Carlos Sainz will start in third place. Ferraris, I suppose, hope for trying to win this race. They had a double DNF last time out. Two cars failing to finish, both with mechanical issues, Jack. They need to find some form, don't they? That was the chat coming into this. What's happened to Ferrari's championship battles in both the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yesterday was a difficult one to read into, because Leclerc didn't really do qualifying because he's starting at the back of the grid anyway, and in wet conditions it's difficult to judge. They looked okay, on Friday in the dry, did Ferrari. In fact, in free practice 2, Leclerc was just half a tenth away from Verstappen. Sainz was a little bit further back than that. But if Sainz can get ahead of Alonso at the start of the race, he's got a shot. He's got a shot at doing something about Verstappen. I'm not 100% convinced he can, but he is the only driver in the top 12 on the grid who I think has a realistic opportunity of stopping Verstappen. So the start for Sainz is going to be crucial, and I, you know what, we haven't seen what tyres they're going to be on yet, and strategy-wise, but I wouldn't be surprised if they put Sainz on a soft to try and leapfrog Alonso at the start to at least get in the mix with Verstappen. Otherwise, because Sainz can easily start third, drive around and finish third today. That's no problem at all. He could probably start third, drive around quite easily and finish second today. But I think if he wants to win, they need to go a bit aggressive.
I think a lot of people might go aggressive, none other than Alonso. Great to hear him back at the front of this grid, the first time, or the best qualifying since Germany 2012. He'll be right alongside Fernando Alonso. So many people in town yesterday in the city of Montreal. The streets were packed. They were absolutely heaving with fans who have made their way from all of the corners of the earth to come here and watch their heroes. And this is a great place to watch sport. It's a great race to support the sport as well. 338,000 people have packed into this Circuit Gilles Villeneuve over the last 4 days to see the action. And this is the payoff, isn't it? This is the moment they've all been waiting for, when the 20 cars take to the grid and do 70 laps around this beautiful parkland riverside circuit, and we will see what they do. We will see who wins it. Will Verstappen extend his lead at the top of the championship? Can Leclerc come and storm from the back and try and do something about his massive disadvantage in the championship now of 34 points? It's been one heck of a season so far, and this is the gift that hopefully keeps on giving.
Charles Leclerc in the Scarlet Ferrari wins the Australian Grand Prix. It's his second win of the season.
Let's go, come on, yes! The car was incredible today, really.
Oh, huge hit for Leclerc, and he's off. Leclerc spins, hits the barriers. Might get away with it. No, damage the front wing. Leclerc's damaged the front wing. He's thrown this away. And the Red Bull wins at the home of Ferrari. And Verstappen closes the gap of the championship down.
Oh, it's a Ferrari going slowly.
Charles Leclerc, the race leader, is going slowly. Charles Leclerc is slowing down.
No! Lost power.
Verstappen wins in Barcelona, and it's a Red Bull 1-2. Verstappen finishes third and extends his lead at the top of the championship, but Sergio Perez is the 2022 Monaco Grand Prix winner. Leclerc started on pole, he only finishes in fourth.
Season is long, but we cannot do that.
Smoke pouring out of the back of the Ferrari, and another dismal weekend for the Monegasque man. He's out of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Problem, engine.
And in a season where things just keep falling apart for Ferrari, Max Verstappen wins again. Victory in Azerbaijan.
Was that a good race, or was that a good race? You tell me.
Well, that was a good race last time out, just 1 week ago. This season is coming thick and fast. This is round 9 of the Formula One World Championship. Live from Montreal, I'm Jenny Gow. I'll be pitside to talk about all the reaction, what's happening, pit stops, any of the gossip and drama I can bring you. But in the commentary box, watching on for this race, we'll have the F1 reserve driver for Williams, Jack Aitken, and alongside him, calling the race, calling the drama, it is Jack Nicholls.
Well, speaking of drama, Jenny, that little montage was just from the last 6 races. That could have been a season of Ferrari disappointment, but it was all in the last 6 races. Unbelievable how things have turned around in this Formula One World Championship. Max Verstappen, the championship leader, 21 points ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez, who's in second in the standings, 34 points ahead of Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc has to start in 19th on the grid because of taking a new power unit, because he's had 2 break down already this season. So he needs to get back up into the top 10 to try and limit the damage caused by surely a big haul of points for Max Verstappen this afternoon. Fernando Alonso is going to be scrappy as ever, starting in second on the grid. Lewis Hamilton is going to be interesting to watch from fourth place, but this, a big opportunity for Max Verstappen to extend his championship lead and strengthen his grasp on this 2022 season. It's 7 o'clock here on BBC Radio 5 Live. This, the Canadian Grand Prix. The cars making their way around on the formation lap, and this is the grid. Max Verstappen on pole position for the Red Bull team, with Fernando Alonso alongside him on the front row in the Alpine. Carlos Sainz is third for Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton fourth for Mercedes. The two Haas of Kevin Magnussen and Mick Schumacher are fifth and sixth. Esteban Ocon is seventh. George Russell, Daniel Ricciardo and Zhou Guanyu complete the top 10. Then it's Bottas, Albon, Perez, Norris and Gasly the top 15. Vettel, Stroll, Latifi, Leclerc and Tsunoda the 20 drivers. So the cars making their way around now. Most of them are starting on the medium tyre. Valtteri Bottas in 11th is on the hards. Sergio Perez in 13th and Lando Norris in 14th are on the hards. Lance Stroll in 17th is on the hards.
Let's go, baby. Let's get some good points.
And Charles Leclerc in 19th is on the hard tyre. Everybody else on the medium, so they will try and run long. That message was to Fernando Alonso. Let's go, baby, and get some good points. I'm so interested to see what Alonso does at this, because he said in the press conference yesterday, Jack Aitken, I want to lead a Grand Prix again, even if it's just for a lap. I want that feeling, so he wants to go for it down into the first corner.
I think a large portion of us watching want to see that as well. It's been so cool to see him getting back on top of his game, and the Alpine as well, becoming competitive. And yeah, if we could see him leading a race, that would be just phenomenal. Interesting to see all of the out of position runners towards the back of the field, like Perez and Latifi, sorry, not Latifi, Leclerc, all starting on the hard compound, and that's to try and get an overcut on the slower cars in front of them. In case they find it difficult to get past, they will stay out longer and use that clean air to move their way up the field.
Max Verstappen lining up on pole position, and it'll be Fernando Alonso alongside him. Jenny Gao.
Yeah, just a reminder, last time we were here, 2019. It's been 2 long years, the fans have waited, we are back. It was Lewis Hamilton who won last time out from Sebastian Vettel. Will it be controversial this time? That's the question.
Verstappen now pulling into his pole position slot. He's on the inside line on the run down towards the first corner, which is a tight left-hander. Fernando Alonso is alongside him on the front row. Not since 1993, and Damon Hill has the driver starting second on the grid, led at the end of the first lap. That's going to be Alonso's aim. We have seen drivers and cars come from third to first by the run down to the first corner, most notably Sebastian Vettel in 2016. That'll be Carlos Sainz's aim. Hamilton, fourth in the Mercedes, would love to gain a little bit of ground, but I think he is in for the long run. Charles Leclerc lines up in 19th place. Verstappen, the championship leader, is on pole. Alonso is second. Carlos Sainz is third, and Lewis Hamilton is fourth. The green flag is waved at the back of the grid, and here come the lights and the start of the Canadian Grand Prix of 2022. It's a pretty decent start from Verstappen. He holds the lead coming down towards turn 1. Hamilton's got away well and is side by side with Carlos Sainz. Tries to go all the way around the outside of Sainz, but locks up and doesn't manage to make it stick. Fernando Alonso holds on to second place. It's a perfect start for Max Verstappen. He leads. Alonso is second. Hamilton is now under pressure from Kevin Magnussen, who tries to go around the outside at turn 3. Doesn't manage to pull that off. Esteban Ocon has got ahead of Mick Schumacher in the Haas, so Ocon is now up into 6th place. Charles Leclerc, we'll see how many places he's made off the start, how aggressive he's been. Perez is already on the attack, trying to go around the outside of Valtteri Bottas, so he's made up a place already and got up into 12th spot. Leclerc has got ahead of Nicolas Latifi, but it's only 1 place gained. Max Verstappen leads, Alonso second, Sainz third, Hamilton fourth, halfway around the first lap, and that went perfectly for Max Verstappen at the front, Jack Aitken.
Yeah, that's exactly what he would have been imagining when he was practicing his race starts yesterday and visualising them this morning. George Russell is going up the inside of the Haas of Schumacher, who's dropped 2 places now. He's also lost one to Ocon in the Alpine. So he's not having the best first lap here, but yeah, Perez and Leclerc not making huge ground on this first lap.
Leclerc right behind Pierre Gasly as they come down the back straight towards the chicane. Daniel Ricciardo is having to defend from Joe over 9th position. Russell, as you say, made up that place and skipping through the runoff area is Valtteri Bottas at the end of the back straight, goes straight through the chicane, maybe hit one of the polystyrene marker boards, and as a result has dropped all the way back to 13th now behind Alex Albon. So that promotes Perez up into 11th place. I wonder if it was Perez and Bottas going side by side into the chicane. Hopefully we'll get a replay of that in a bit, but we're on the second lap of the Grand Prix. Verstappen leads, Alonso second, Sainz is third, Hamilton fourth, Magnussen fifth. Ocon and Russell are 6th and 7th after getting ahead of Mick Schumacher in the Haas, who's dropped down to 8th. 9th is Daniel Ricciardo, 10th is Joe. And then it's Perez, Albon, Bottas, Norris and Vettel, the top 15. Stroll, Leclerc, Gasly, Tsunoda and Latifi, the 20 drivers. So Leclerc did get ahead of Gasly. Gasly, the biggest loser at the start, dropping 3 positions. So not ideal there for the Frenchman. A bit of damage on the front right wing end plate of Kevin Magnussen there. So he's had a bit of contact at some point, and that'll be a bit of a problem for him for the rest of the Grand Prix.
Yeah, that's an annoying kind of damage that's right on the cusp of do you change it and take the hit at the pit stop and cost yourself those seconds. I imagine they probably will, partly for safety more than anything else, because that end plate does look like it just could fly off at any moment. So Alonso now already coming under pressure from Sainz, who is fairly close but not within striking range, and this could be the classic Alonso train starting up. I don't want to speak too soon, but he looks in control so far.
Lap 3 of 70, so the DRS will be activated on this lap, so he'll have a chance coming down the back straight. The Alpine is quick in a straight line, but so is the Ferrari. Verstappen got the best start of pretty much anyone. I mean, Hamilton got a decent one too, but it was Verstappen it was just a perfect getaway.
Yeah, looking further back down the field at Leclerc, he didn't have a good start actually. The initial launch was very slow. He did gain some ground back in the run to turn 1, but he wasn't able to challenge for any places. Hamilton and Magnussen there fighting, and it's very, very awkward going into turn 3 to run side by side. There's no space at all. And that's where he picked up the damage. We see Hamilton just clipping the front right end plate of Magnussen. Not a big hit, so no concern for Hamilton for a puncture or anything like that. Here's a replay now of Bottas just locking up and going wide, and he does hit that polystyrene bollard on the way back through to the track. I wonder if he might get... You're supposed to go around the bollard. He went through the bollard. What do you think about that?
And here comes Carlos Sainz. He's now got ahead of Fernando Alonso then. Sainz gets ahead of Alonso into the chicane at the end of the lap and is up into 2nd place. He's 2.5 seconds back from Verstappen. So now that fight for the race victory can start. What pace has Carlos Sainz got on lap 4 of 70?
Okay, Kev, we see some small front wing damage, but there's very little effect, so it's okay for us.
So Magnussen being told there...
It looks like Magnussen has a damaged front wing.
Yeah, I can see it's hanging off.
Yeah, copy that.
It's about to fall.
DRS enabled.
If it loses it, I think it in the face, huh?
Ocon, I think, trying his hardest to get Magnussen a bit of not a penalty, but an instruction to come in and fix it, because it's not really flapping off that bad, to be honest, the little piece on the front of Magnussen's car. I think he got 2 hits. I think he got hit once on the way into the corner, and then when he sort of slotted in behind Hamilton, I think there was another clip as well, and that's what did it. Alonso is going to be under pressure here from Lewis Hamilton, but I think he'll have maybe the DRS still from Carlos Sainz ahead. So through the hairpin at turn 10, and now they start the long blast back towards the final chicane and the pit lane. Fernando Alonso is behind Carlos Sainz, only 0.8 of a second behind actually, as they come down towards the chicane. As a result, Hamilton, even though he's in DRS range of Alonso, isn't close enough to make a move into the chicane. Sainz on that last lap, having cleared Alonso, comes across the line and was 0.6 of a second slower on that last lap compared to Max Verstappen. So Verstappen's lead goes up to 3.1 seconds on lap 5 of 70.
So Alonso was, it was more danger of Alonso getting back past Sainz on that back straight than Hamilton getting past Alonso. The straight line speed of that Alpine does look pretty good. I know they have a new rear wing update that's been brought for this race, which is skinny, as a lot of teams have done, to try and get that top speed boost.
Lap 5 of 70 in the Canadian Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. After this, we will be keeping you up to date, and during the race as well, with all of the golf in the Open that we've got coming up over the rest of the evening. Down in the pit lane, though, is Jenny Gao.
Yeah, just looking at strategy. So we're expecting those that started on a medium tyre, which is most of the field, to have to come in around lap 22 to 28. Now, the thing is, it's a short pit lane and they can go at 80 kilometres an hour. That's the speed limit that they have to come down to. But it means that the pit stop should be around 18.5 seconds total time lost. 9 seconds if there's a virtual safety car or an actual safety car. So people could go one stop, they could go two stop. We'll see what they can do. If they get stuck in traffic, they might choose two stops just to get themselves out of a pickle.
Russell has got ahead of Kevin Magnussen and up into 5th position. So Russell now into 5th with his teammate Hamilton in 4th. He's made good progress, Russell, having started in 8th place. Carlos Sainz sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. That's a bit more like it. Vettel has just pitted from 15th, as has Pierre Gasly from 18th places. So those are pretty early pit stops from them. But that's a better lap from Sainz. He's complaining on the radio of front right graining, but then does the fastest lap of the race. So that's, as I say, more encouraging for the Ferrari, because that first lap in clear air was a little bit depressing if you're a Ferrari engineer, to be 6/10 slower than Verstappen over one lap.
Yeah, it's looking a lot more like it now, though Alonso is still clinging on to the back of him. He was only 2 tenths slower on that last lap, and the gap is still below a second, so he will still get that DRS when we come around to the back straight again. Now on board with Guan Yu Zhou. And
he has managed to get ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, so Zhou has managed to get in the Alfa Romeo ahead of the McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo coming into the chicane. So nice move there. Sainz is again continuing to close in on Max Verstappen on this lap. Alonso still with him, Hamilton still with him. Russell is 3.7 seconds back. Leclerc meanwhile is in 15th, so he's got ahead of Stroll. He's taken the position away from Vettel after Vettel pitted. They've gone onto the hard tyre, so it's an interesting choice to pit that early. Sainz, though, again sets the fastest lap of the race and closes the gap down to 2.7 seconds. So that's very, very encouraging for Ferrari. A 1 minute 17.9 for Carlos Sainz, but Verstappen is responding and pushing in the first sector of this lap, lap 7 of 70. And we'll see what kind of pace Sainz can have. He's already lost 3 tenths in the first sector alone to Verstappen, though, on this lap. So fascinating battle up at the front with Alonso sticking with them. Hamilton's actually dropped out of DRS range of Fernando Alonso. He's running in 4th. The other Mercedes of Russell is 5th. Magnussen is 6th in the Haas. Ocon, Schumacher, Zhou and Ricciardo are the rest of the top 10. We're just having a look at Pierre Gasly, who came into the pits, and nearly smashed into the back of Lance Stroll. You brake later to go into the pit lane than you do for the chicane, and he nearly got caught out by it.
It's a very awkward pit entry and pit exit here, because you end up on the racing line in both cases, so drivers have to be extra careful. And there has been a black and orange flag given for Magnussen, and here's the radio.
Okay, Kev, we have been given a black and orange flag, so we have to pit to change this front wing.
We had this in Baku last race as well. Ocon's having a look at the back of into the pits. Now comes Magnussen. Ocon was trying to get past Magnussen. Magnussen comes in, and they will have to change that front wing, and that is effectively ruined. Well, maybe not completely ruined, but it'll take a lot of time. Jenny?
He's just in front of me, actually, so a long hold while they're trying to attach this new front wing. So they've taken off the old one, the new one goes in. There's a few clicks and twirls to do. He's off, he's not off. They've still got one little bit to do. There we go, just a hand comes out from the mechanic. He's on a hard set of tyres. I wonder if they're trying to go to the end now on this hard set of tyres. Let's see how they can go. It's a long way.
Lap 8 of 70 here in the Canadian Grand Prix. Later on we'll have full commentary on the golf starting at about 9 o'clock, and we can get an update now from Ian Carter.
And Rory McIlroy starting off just 3 shots off the lead with his opening tee shot. Decent one as well, Jack, down the right-hand side, just run into the semi-rough, but no problem off the first tee. And so McIlroy, who finds himself at 1 under par behind the 2 co-leaders, remember, Will Zalatoris and England's Matt Fitzpatrick. They'll be off in about half an hour.
Thank you very much, Ian. Full commentary later on, as I say, of the US Open. Sergio Perez in the Red Bull is pulling off the circuit. The Red Bull appears to have broken down and is pulling off at the side of the track at turn 8. His teammate Max Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the race.
I lost the engine, man. Yep. I'm stuck in gear.
But Perez has lost the engine and retired. Well, reliability problems this time for the Red Bull squad, and that is going to be concerning because their other car, Max Verstappen, leading the Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz closed in by 0.3 seconds on that last lap. It's good news for Charles Leclerc, because the virtual safety car is deployed now, so that means everybody has to slow to effectively a speed limit. And Leclerc has got up to 13th place. Perez, who's second in the championship, is out of the Grand Prix. Will be a concern, though, for the Red Bull team.
Yeah, that came out of the blue a little bit, and obviously they're not going to have the full story of what's happened with that car until after the race when they get it back. Just going on board with Perez now, he's coming through turn 6 and 7. Everything looks normal. Oh, that sounded horrible. It's like it's jumped out of gear.
Yeah, or something, or like sort of drive shafty, where suddenly it just doesn't, the throttle's working, but it doesn't go to the wheels anymore.
And then he said it was stuck in gear as well, so two issues I can't think of a link between the two off the top of my head, but yeah, that's got to be a concern, and you wonder, he is leading by quite a way already and looking comfortable, so they may ask him to turn it down, just play it safe.
But is anyone going to pit here? Yes, Verstappen pits. Max Verstappen pits from the lead of the Grand Prix. Because we are under the virtual safety car, you lose less time in the pit lane. So Verstappen comes in, Sainz does not, Alonso does not, Hamilton does. This is very, very interesting now for the strategy of this Grand Prix. New tyres on for Max Verstappen. Out he goes, he's onto the hard tyres on lap 10 of 70. His pit stop time was 2.8 seconds. Hamilton now into the pits as well. He also goes onto the hard tyres and heads back out onto the circuit. But that means Sainz leads, but has yet to stop. Alonso is second. Verstappen is third. Russell is fourth. So he's managed to come out ahead of George Russell still. Ocon is fifth. Hamilton is now sixth. Schumacher, Zhou, Ricciardo and Albon, the rest of the top 10. Still under virtual safety car, so they're all going slowly at the moment. So we saw this similarly in Azerbaijan last week, and we never found out what the real answer was, whether that was the right decision or the wrong decision, because we're still very early in the Grand Prix to be changing onto the hard tyre if this is your one and only pit stop.
Yeah, it's a long way to go on the hard. They will probably feel that there's a chance that there will be more interruptions in the race, and if not, they can do some more extreme management with Max because he has that pace advantage. But not many of the cars in the top 10 choosing to go that way. Only, as you say, Verstappen and Hamilton showing that it's really a bit of a well,
that's the thing, is because Baku, basically everybody did it except I think except the Red Bulls. It was almost opposite, wasn't it? The Red Bulls didn't, and then everybody else kind of did. So really, really interesting. Virtual safety car is ending. They're about to go back to full speed. Jenny Gao.
Yeah, and just looking at that, some good pit stops in there, and as you say, some strategy coming out. Latifi, who's towards the rear end of this pack, he came in to change onto hard, as did Tsunoda. Gasly and Vettel came in. That was planned on lap 6 to change onto hard. So just waiting for word back from Pirelli.
Hamilton lost places.
He came out behind Esteban.
So we know what to do now.
So Alonso saying we know what to do now that Hamilton's behind Ocon, i.e. do your best to hold him up in the same way that Alonso held up Hamilton in order for Ocon to win the Hungarian Grand Prix last year. It's time for Ocon to return the favour and the Alpines to try and finish ahead of the Mercedes. So we're on lap 11 of 70, the Canadian Grand Prix here on 5 Live. Carlos Sainz leads and Fernando Alonso is second. Those two haven't pitted. Max Verstappen is third. He has made a pit stop. George Russell is fourth. He hasn't pitted. Ocon in fifth, hasn't pitted. Hamilton is sixth, has pitted. Schumacher, Zhou, Ricciardo and Albon, the rest of the top 10. But it's only Verstappen and Hamilton that have made a pit stop. So this has thrown a little early curved ball into the Canadian Grand Prix because of Sergio Perez in the Red Bull retiring. Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo is now chasing Schumacher.
Maximum push now, 15 laps here. Copy.
Carlos Sainz saying maximum push now. He's in the lead of the Grand Prix, never won a Grand Prix. A lot of people have had their debut wins at this racetrack, including Lewis Hamilton, who is now trying to get past Esteban Ocon coming into the chicane, goes to the outside, late on the brakes, but you just can't go side by side through that right and the left. He then tries to get the better drive out of the second part. He'll get the DRS again. You can go around the outside at turn 1, and that's exactly what Hamilton is trying to do. Late on the brakes, gets it done, little bit of a lock-up on the left front, but he makes it stick, and Hamilton gets ahead of Esteban Ocon and up into 5th place then. So Sainz leads, Alonso second, both haven't pitted, and then it's Verstappen in third, has pitted, Russell in fourth, has not, Hamilton in fifth, has.
It was a solid move from Lewis. I mean, to be fair, not a lot that Ocon could have done. He double DRS with the back straight and the front straight meant that he had such an advantage going into the first braking zone, but Hamilton right on the edge of adhesion with those front tyres as he came into turn 1, smoking a little bit, but keeping things relatively under control. And we're going to see a replay of it now. Pops out of the slipstream, takes the outside line for turn 1, but it's actually inside for the kink running into the braking zone, and brakes a fair bit later than Ocon. It's no problem to get ahead of him before the apex. So nice and clean.
That is the Williams reserve driver who raced in the Bahrain Grand Prix a couple of years ago, Jack Aitken, alongside myself, Jack Nicholls. Down in the pit lane in Montreal is Jenny Gao.
Basking in the sunshine as well, how different it is from yesterday. We had cold temperatures and rain, hence the mixed up grid today, but 20 degrees at the moment. But the question mark is this track. It's called green. Basically, there's not much rubber down on it because it rained so much yesterday. So the teams don't know what to expect from these tyres. A lot of them think the hard tyre is the best tyre to be on out there. So that's why quite a few of them have changed onto the hard tyre already. But they don't have the data to tell them how long it will go. So it's a case at the moment, if you're on that hard tyre, of suck it and see, and they'll try and get to the end without having to stop again. But will they be able to make it? That's the big question.
Well, Verstappen at the moment is push it and see. He's just at the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, a tenth quicker on that last lap than Carlos Sainz. He's only 6.4 seconds back from the Spaniard who leads the race. So at the moment, Verstappen is what I wouldn't exactly describe him as being in a tyre-saving phase.
No, and it's the same when you look at Hamilton. You know, he's obviously just passed Ocon, but he was quicker already than his teammate Russell, who is still on the medium tyre in front of him. And on this lap, the pace is very similar, if not in favour of Hamilton. So the hard tyre looks like a good race tyre. And I wonder if that medium is just suffering a bit in these much hotter conditions.
Here comes Charles Leclerc trying to get ahead of Lando Norris for 12th position. The man who is third in the championship at the moment gets through now into 12th place. Points are awarded to the top 10, so he's still got a couple more cars to try and pass. The first of those is Valtteri Bottas, who's running in 11th. Then the next is Alex Albon, who's in 10th place at the moment in the Williams and having a very strong run. On that last lap, Verstappen was again a 10th quicker than Carlos Sainz, but it's whether it could be now that both Sainz and Verstappen have to stop again, potentially, because of how early Max Verstappen pitted. Now, Verstappen will be able to pit later than Sainz and have fresher tyres towards the end, but I guess they didn't want it. It was a difficult call that for Verstappen, whether you stay out or come in, because if you stay out, you keep track position, but then Sainz probably would have pitted. I imagine the instructor to Sainz would have been do the opposite to whatever Verstappen does.
Yeah, it's, you know, when you're in the position behind that Sainz is, and especially considering they probably aren't the quicker car to hit here today, yeah, they have to do something different just to try and get lucky. But Verstappen, he's going to get that track position back fairly quickly. I think he's now, less than a second? Yeah, he's now in DRS of Alonso. That shouldn't take him too long, so he'll be up to P2. He'll have a bit of free air, and he's really, you know, got a lot of track position and time to manage those tyres the way that he wants to after that.
Think about the alternative plan.
So get behind still 2.7.
Just let me focus on the driver. You think about the strategy.
Understood.
Think about the alternative plan.
So that's Russell, I think, George Russell in the Mercedes, I think, asking to do an alternative plan, basically.
Yeah, it sounded like it. I'm not sure what an alternative plan would be, because the one stop is clearly the way to go. The only question was if somebody would try and do it with a soft instead of the medium, but he started on the medium. And
it's too late to do a two-stop. Like maybe if you wanted to do a two-stop, you would have already done it by now, I would have thought. Interesting message there from Russell. Here comes Verstappen now on the back of Fernando Alonso. They're coming down the back straight. Lap 15 of 70. Verstappen started this Grand Prix from pole position, and he's going to breeze past Alonso here with the slipstream and with the DRS. And Alonso is up, Verstappen is up into second place. He's about 5 seconds back, 5.5 seconds back from Carlos Sainz, but now he will try and close in on the Ferrari driver. They both potentially have one more pit stop to make. Let's check in at the US Open. Ian Carter.
Excellent start from Rory McIlroy, found the green in 2, has just holed the putt, clenched fist in celebration, and a birdie at the very first hole for McIlroy to move into 2 under par, 2 behind the joint leaders, Matt Fitzpatrick and Will Zalatoris, who've yet to tee off.
And we'll be back there after the Grand Prix for full coverage from Massachusetts. We're on lap 16 of 70 though, in, well, only sort of a little north really, aren't we, on the East Coast. And this is the Canadian Grand Prix on BBC Radio 5 Live. And the sound you can hear is Charles Leclerc's Ferrari. Now he is up behind Bottas, who's up behind Albon, and these three are all still queued up right together. Bottas unable to get past Albon in the Williams at the moment.
Yeah, this is actually probably one of the worst case scenarios for someone like Leclerc, who's trying to cut through the field. He's got 2 cars in front of him, the lead car of which is quite slow at this stage of the race. Bottas is trying to get past and has the DRS on Albon, and while he has that DRS advantage, Leclerc's not going to be able to get close to him on that back straight because of the speed gain that Bottas will have. So he's going to be sitting there waiting for either a mistake from one of the 2 in front of him or for Bottas to clear Albon so that he can then have a crack at him.
Here comes Bottas now. He's closer, I think, than he's been previously. He's less than 0.4 of a second behind the Williams as they come down the back straight towards the final chicane. Albon holds the middle of the road, just curves the inside. Bottas to the outside, but Bottas is rarely braver on the brakes than those around him, and at the moment it is remaining to be the case as they come down into the first corner. Once again, Bottas has the DRS, but he's not close enough, so Albon's looking fairly comfortable there at the head of this queue. Not obviously super comfortable, he's under a lot of pressure, but he's managing it well at the moment.
Comfortable in a straight line, that car is. I think. It looks like he's got good top-end speed, because even with Bottas exiting fairly well from the hairpin and getting good drive with the DRS, he could only pull alongside the Williams, and then it's just who's bravest onto the brakes, and Alex was more than a match for Bottas on that occasion. So he's going to have to try something a little bit different here, Valtteri.
Yeah, absolutely. Lap 17 of 70, Jenny Gow.
Yeah, just looking at strategy now, for those who haven't come in, which by my reckoning is over half of the field, they're looking at coming off the medium tyres sometime between lap 22 and lap 28. So they're going to want to go as long as they can, just in case there's a safety car or a virtual safety car, which would give them a cheap pit stop. But at the moment, a lot of laps still to go, 53 laps to go. And quite a lot of cars still circulating out there on their original tyres.
Here comes Bottas now. He's getting alongside Albon as they come into the chicane at the end of the lap. But Albon's still there on the inside. He's very late on the brakes, but Bottas makes the move around the outside, and Leclerc is now surely going to breeze past into the first corner. So as soon as Albon got passed by Bottas, Leclerc then sweeps past 2 and up into 11th position. So Bottas in 10th, Leclerc in 11th, just 1 place away from the points-paying positions. Albon's spirited defence drifts away. He's now going to be coming under pressure from Lando Norris. And this is still a strong race from Albon, considering the Williams is basically, is it fair to say, the slowest car out there? Williams reserve driver Jack Aitken.
Put me on the spot like that.
Yeah, it's slower than a Ferrari.
It's not one of the strongest circuits. So you can see the straight line speed is good, but Albon is sliding quite a lot with those rear tyres already, struggling, and he was a bit unlucky there in fighting Bottas for that position into the last corner. Braking as late as he did, he compromised his exit and made it even easier for Leclerc to get past him on the run into turn 1. But he's doing well to battle for those positions.
Lap 19 of 70. Carlos Sainz is leading this Grand Prix. He is 4.6 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen in the Red Bull in second has made a pit stop. Carlos Sainz in the lead in the Ferrari has not, but they maybe both need to make another pit stop. Here's Sainz's radio.
Still on plan A. They look better than expected. Lower deck.
So that's Sainz being told we're still on plan A, which presumably is the one-stop strategy, where he pits in within the next 10 laps approximately and goes onto the hard tyres. And then he's being told the tyres you're going onto are looking better than expected, much lower degradation. The tyres aren't falling apart as much as we feared. So that's, broadly speaking, good news for Sainz, although the fact that the tyres are looking better and no degradation maybe means Verstappen could eke it out, potentially.
Yeah, I think his pace is actually really good at the front of the field, as we see the Alpha of, is that Zhao passing Haas's
Schumacher.
and he's gone wide.
Yeah, Schumacher went straight on down at turn. Did that look a problem?
Yeah, it looked like he just pulled off rather than going straight on.
Yeah, yellow flag is out as Schumacher, I think, has pulled off the circuit, and this will be a real shame for Haas if both of them are out of the Grand Prix, and they are. Schumacher is out. Magnussen not out of the Grand Prix, but he had to pit for a new front wing, and as a result is down in 17th place, and 5th and 6th for Haas on the grid has scored no points, and Russell pits just as the virtual safety car comes out.
That is perfect for Mercedes and George Russell. He's going to save so much time with this pit stop. He's run longer than the guys who pitted earlier, Verstappen and Hamilton. He's now got a fresh set of hard tyres and has avoided that penalty of a green flag pit stop.
Yeah, so Russell comes out in 5th place behind Lewis Hamilton still, because Hamilton's pit stop was also under a virtual safety car. He's onto a fresher set of tyres than Hamilton on the hards, and we're on lap 20 of 70, and the virtual safety car deployed for the second time. Jenny Gao?
Yeah, everyone coming into the pit lane now, and the two McLarens come in almost the same time, so they're double stacking those. I think Ricciardo came in first, went from medium to hard, but then Norris came in as well. Now, he started on the hard tyre, so that medium tyre better be working as well as some of them hope, because he's got a very long way to go, or maybe they've locked him into a two-stop by doing that.
It's a very, very slow one as well, isn't it? The hard tyre only just going on for Lando Norris. That took an awful long time for it to work. Now, the reason that Sainz and Alonso didn't stop again, presumably they had just gone past the pit lane entry when the virtual safety car was deployed, because Russell was right on it to the point of I'm not sure if it was luck or not, almost. You know, it was that tight.
It could have even been that they just saw the yellow flag and Mercedes said, we're going to take the chance, box now, and we'll hope that it's a virtual safety car.
Just hearing what happened to Schumacher, got onto the brakes, just completely lost the engine when he got on the brakes. Now Carlos Sainz is in the pits for Ferrari. Carlos Sainz into the pit lane.
Sorry, man. You were on it.
That's the apology to Mick Schumacher on the radio, but this is interesting because Carlos Sainz comes out of the pit lane now, just as the track goes green again, and he's going to come out behind Alonso and crucially just ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. So the race goes green. Sainz didn't lose too much time in the pit stop now compared to Verstappen. So the order is Verstappen has pitted. Alonso in second has not pitted. Carlos Sainz in third has pitted. He's got 10 laps, 11 laps fresher tyres than Max Verstappen, but is 9 seconds behind him on the road. And can Hamilton get ahead of Sainz here? That's going to be quite interesting. He's very close. Sainz sort of either braking early or regenerating energy early. That was quite dramatic under the bridge.
I think Hamilton was hard on the overtake button there. They do have that option available to them. He's putting a lot of pressure on while Sainz is finding his feet with these new set of tyres. And he's not too far away from the back of the Ferrari, but that's probably too far to have a go into the last chicane.
0.6 of a second back as Hamilton opens the DRS coming down the back straight. He did just lose a little bit too much ground in the hairpin, I think. So across the line comes Verstappen. He has made a pit stop. His tyres are 12 laps older than Carlos Sainz. Alonso is second, still yet to pit, which is an interesting decision from Alpine. Third is Carlos Sainz, who's on a new set of tyres. Fourth is Hamilton, whose tyres are the same age as Verstappen's in the lead, 12 laps old. Then Russell and Ocon. And Leclerc is going around the outside of Bottas into the chicane. Nicely done from Charles Leclerc, and he's got up into 7th place now. So the Ferrari continuing to climb through the field.
That was a big send from Charlie. He went very deep on the brake to make sure he got the move done. Missed the first apex to still give the other car a bit of room, and clambered all over the yellow curb on the second apex, which is a bit of a risky thing to do when you've got the wall of champions sitting invitingly on the outside. But we're seeing Alonso now. He's already been caught by the two cars who have made their pit stop. So it's a very strange decision. They're obviously just trying to do something different with that medium tyre.
Well, unless they just figured they didn't have enough time, potentially, to come in, or they thought the virtual safety car was going to end slightly sooner than it did. Here comes Sainz now. The DRS pops open. And now they charge down towards the chicane, and there's nothing Alonso can do. Sainz gets through, back up into second place, 9.5 seconds back from Max Verstappen. So an interesting battle now for the lead of the Grand Prix. We are not yet at half race distance. Verstappen's tyres are 12 laps older than Carlos Sainz's. Sainz is 9.5 seconds back. Will Verstappen have to pit again? I think Sainz is comfortably in the window where he can go to the end of the race on these tyres. Verstappen, it's unclear.
We're seeing a replay of Daniel Ricciardo's stop, and then it was a double stack from McLaren to get both cars in during that VSC. Lando slightly delayed as he came in, but otherwise looking again, it's the front right wheel gun that's slow to get the wheel off.
And then there's no wheel ready.
There's no wheel ready for him.
Oh, and then they had to take the front left off. Oh, it was a medium. It was a medium tyre that was on the front left of Norris's car, so that was a disaster. And he's down in 17th place now. That was huge from Leclerc, you're right, at the chicane. I didn't quite realise how big a send that was.
Yeah, he just got it slowed down in time. The risk with that is that you miss the braking point and clambers over the curb fully with the floor on the curb, and of course you lose all steering at that point, and it would have been strange to the wall, but he managed it perfectly. But now Hamilton right up Alonso's chuff.
Here they come down the, cuts to the inside, quite last minute there, Lewis Hamilton, gets the DRS open and gets through, up into third spot then. So Verstappen leads, Sainz second, Hamilton third. They've all made a pit stop, but Hamilton and Verstappen made theirs much earlier than Carlos Sainz in second place. Fernando Alonso is down to fourth, and in a little bit now of sort of no man's land. I don't really know what the strategy is going to be for Alonso. Well, obviously he's going to do a one stop at some point, but he'll come out maybe even behind his teammate Ocon, who has pitted potentially. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Zhou is fighting with Lance Stroll, who is in 9th place and yet to pit. So 7th, 8th and 9th, Leclerc, Bottas and Stroll are yet to make a pit stop. So I'm interested to see what happens to them. And that's actually true, because in all of this, while things are looking okay for Leclerc, up in 7th place, you think that's positive. He hasn't been into the pits yet, and he's going to then have to go onto the medium tyre later in the Grand Prix.
Yeah, all of these VSCs have actually played into the hands of those who have started on the medium, not those who started on the hard. So Leclerc has been hit quite hard by that. He's going to have to hope for more interruptions later in this race to gain that time back. Otherwise, that's what, nearly 20 seconds that's just out of his pocket that he's never going to get back.
Here's Joe's radio.
We don't have enough speed.
You're doing very good, Joe. Keep pressure high, just keep pressure high.
We don't have enough speed, says Joe, and by that I think he just means straight line speed to try and get ahead of Lance Stroll, who's in 9th position. Let's go back to the US Open and Ian Carter.
World number one, Scotty Scheffler off to a good start with a birdie at the first. He moves to 3 under within a shot of the lead. Rory McIlroy safely through the par 3. Second after his birdie at the first, McIlroy at 2 under. So 2 behind. The joint leaders Zalatoris and Fitzpatrick will be underway shortly.
Thank you very much, Ian. We'll be back there after the conclusion of the Grand Prix, about 9-ish here on 5 Live. But at the moment, it's myself, Jack Nicholls, the Williams reserve driver, Jack Aitken and Jenny Gow with you. Max Verstappen is leading the race. He's 9 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz, but his tyres are a lot older than Carlos Sainz is in the Ferrari in second place. And that is going to be the intrigue over the remaining 45 laps of this Grand Prix. Zhou Guanyu is running well in 10th position, trying to get ahead of Lance Stroll in 9th place. That's the closest fight on the circuit, with Yuki Tsunoda there in 11th as well. The full top 10 is Verstappen, Sainz, Hamilton, Alonso, Russell, the top 5. Ocon, Leclerc, Bottas, Stroll and Zhou, the top 10. Alonso in 4th place, yet to pit. Jenny Gow.
Yeah, 2 cars are out of this race so far. Sergio Perez in the Red Bull and Mick Schumacher for Haas. And I think a lot of people deeply upset for Schumacher. He was going so well, but unfortunately it just wasn't to be. And just looking at McLaren, they did come in. They did do that double pit stop. They stacked their drivers. Ricciardo was first. They made a total mess up with Norris. They've got on top of their pit stops recently and been doing much better than a couple of years ago, but today, not a good day for McLaren when it comes to their pit stops. They'll have to do better if they're going to do another one today.
Yeah, absolutely. Lap 26 of 70, and Verstappen leading the Grand Prix, Sainz in second, Hamilton in third. I do feel a bit for Haas, because that damage on Kevin Magnussen's car wasn't particularly big, but the race director made them come in and change it. The same happened, I thought, a little bit unfairly as well, to Yuki Tsunoda in Baku with when his rear wing was flapping around a little bit. I've not seen that in a long time in Formula One. New race directors for this season, Eduardo Freitas and Nils Wittig, and I don't know, I always think that with a little bit of damage like that, it's up to the it's not causing a safety issue as far as I can tell, really. But I don't know. Well, who am I to say?
It's just it's a subjective point, which is always difficult when that comes to the rules, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it looked like it was fairly secure, but the race director's point of view will have been, well, what if it flies off and it does strike someone, as Ocon was complaining quite pointedly earlier in the race, obviously trying to use the broadcasted radio to his advantage. But yeah, I think it's as you say, it can depend on the individual who's up there in the steward's office at the time.
Fastest lap of the race from Carlos Sainz in second position in the Ferrari. Goes 0.2 quicker than Max Verstappen. The gap has come down from 9.5 seconds to 8.8 seconds. Charles Leclerc is continuing his charge. He's up in 7th place now. Verstappen would still extend his championship lead quite a way, and we've still got another pit stop to come for Charles, well, a one and only pit stop to come for Charles Leclerc, because he hasn't yet pitted, running in 7th place, trying to pass Esteban Ocon. George Russell is running in 5th place, and compared to Fernando Alonso, he's about, well, he was 2 seconds quicker on that last lap. So within a couple of laps, Russell will be catching the back of Alonso. I don't know what Alpine are doing with Alonso here. They missed the chance to pit him. It was fine not to pit him under the first virtual safety car. They certainly missed their chance to pit him under the second virtual safety car. And now...
But did they? Because, I mean, they were quite close on tractor science, and they got most of the benefit, even if it went green when Sainz was exiting the pit lane. They must have known that it was going to be...
Well, that's what I mean. Sorry, my point, Alpine, they missed their opportunity. They didn't take it when it was there.
But he's bleeding time now. Like you say, 2 seconds a lap slower than the cars around him, and he's gonna, even if there is some strategy call that we're missing here, I can't see any strategy that's going to gain him back 2 seconds a lap at the end of this race.
Yeah, unless they're just trying to extend in case something else happens.
Just get lucky.
Yeah.
Another VSC, another safety car. That's all that they can do now.
Jenny.
Yeah, just looking at Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, he started on the hard tyre, so he's going as long as he possibly can until he'll switch out to go onto the medium compound of tyre and try and make up as many places as possible. But everybody else is going to be watching him as well to give them a clue of how long this hard tyre can go before it starts losing its performance or degrading. That's what they talk about, degradation. So a lot of people started on the mediums. They'll be looking at Leclerc's lap times to see when this tyre starts to fall off. Can they get to the end of the race, the likes of Verstappen, who pitted on lap 10?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because Leclerc's not going to go till lap 60, because that would be a bonkers strategy. So that's the problem there, is they're not going to get that read from Leclerc. Alonso is now going to pit. He's coming down the back straight, goes straight on at the chicane and into the pit lane. Then the medium tyres will come off. A set of hard tyres will come on. Will he get out in front of his teammate Esteban Ocon? That's going to be the sort of tight part. If he does, he's still in a fairly solid position. If he comes out behind Ocon and Leclerc, that's not going to be ideal. 2.8 seconds the pit stop time for the Alpine team. He comes out now, gets on the gas, and he is behind his teammate Esteban Ocon and Charles Leclerc. Now, he's going to have fresher tyres. Maybe they'll get Ocon to move out the way, and still that 5th place seems doable for Alonso, which I think if you'd have given him 5th at the start of the Grand Prix, it wouldn't have been bad.
I don't have the grip. I just don't have the grip in exit. It's so bad. There's no traction at all.
Copy, understood.
Leclerc saying he's got no traction at all, and as we're riding on board with him, we see him sliding all over the place coming out of turn 7.
Yeah, providing us an example to prove his point. And that's super critical at this circuit more than most. You've got so many chicanes, they're a little bit stop-start, the hairpin which leads onto that massive back straight, and if you can't get the traction, you immediately lose 1 or 2 car lengths to the guy in front, and it's just too much for an Alpine that's got quite a good top-end speed at the moment.
And the other problem is for Leclerc is one option here would be to pit and get into some clear air and make your first pit stop now, but there isn't really much clear air for Leclerc. He'd come out in the middle of the pack somewhere around about, I think he'd come out sort of 15th with Kevin Magnussen if he were to pit now, and then he'd be on a set of medium tyres that no one has managed to do 30 laps on, and he'd have 40 laps to go. So he's a bit snookered here, I think.
Yeah, I imagine that's what the engineer will be feeding back to him, saying, look, I know it's difficult, but we don't have much of an option here strategy-wise. We have to keep going for now. And 40 laps on the medium, I mean, we've seen Alonso's pace just dive bomb in the last 5 laps before he pitted for that hard, and it's only lap 30, so he cannot pit now. He has to try and make this work.
Lap 30 of 70 in the Canadian Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. This is the 9th round of the Formula One World Championship of 2022. Max Verstappen leading the championship and leading the race, but Carlos Sainz in second in the Ferrari is going quicker than the Red Bull, and Verstappen may run into tyre problems towards the end of this Grand Prix. Verstappen is leading, Sainz is second, Hamilton is third, Russell is fourth, the two Mercedes going in third and fourth then. Ocon is fifth for Alpine, sixth is Charles Leclerc, who's yet to stop, Alonso is seventh, 8th is Valtteri Bottas, who is also yet to stop. 9th is Lance Stroll, who's yet to stop, but not for much longer, because here comes Joe. No, can't quite get the move done on Stroll as they come into the chicane. The home driver, Lance Stroll, in the city he grew up in Montreal, under big pressure from Zhou Guanyu, the Chinese driver in the Alfa Romeo, but he's not able to make the move yet, even though he's having a pretty solid drive, I would say, Joe. It's not, I don't think it's really harming his race that he's stuck behind Stroll, because he's 5 seconds back from Bottas, his teammate, but Bottas hasn't pitted. He's not really going to be fighting Alonso. I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes behind Leclerc. So although this is frustrating for Joe, I don't think in the grand scheme of things it's wrecking his afternoon.
No, it's not like there's a bunch of cars in front of him that he'd be chasing down. I think realistically that's sort of his race now with Stroll. But I'm just looking at the pace, and the Mercedes are looking better than I expected, better than what they did in Friday long running. There are only 4 cars in the 1:17 17s on the previous laps, and 2 of them were Hamilton and Russell, the other 2 being Verstappen, our race leader, and Carlos Sainz, who's chasing him down and also showing a pretty good turn of pace.
Yep, it was a tenth slower on that last lap was Sainz, but the gap was 9.5 seconds. The gap is now 8 seconds. It's taken quite a long time for that gap to be chipped away. Charles Leclerc close to the back of the Alpine of Ocon, but not quite close enough. It's interesting because we saw Alonso get overtaken fairly straightforwardly by Sainz in the Ferrari and by Hamilton in the Mercedes. So the straight line speed wasn't outrageous from Alonso, but Ocon is able to keep Leclerc behind. Now Leclerc has been struggling about traction and struggling with traction, and that's why he maybe can't keep quite as close, but I'm surprised that he's been able to stay ahead this long, Ocon, although his tyres are much fresher.
Sometimes you can damage the tyre working your way through the field, because the traction that Charles has been talking about is the thing that really sets you up for overtake. So he would have been leaning on that very heavily in the first laps of the race to try and get past as many cars as he could, get good exits, and really, to maximise the overtakes. And when you do that, you're taking life out of the tyre, so it's possible that he's just run himself into a little bit of a corner here.
Now Matt Fitzpatrick is teeing off at the US Open. Ian Carter.
Just teed off, Jack, and found the middle of the fairway. Very composed, balanced looking swing, so a good start for Fitzpatrick as he makes his way down that opening hole, sharing the lead with Will Zalatoris, with whom he's playing today, and also Scotty Scheffler, because the world #1 has birdied his first 2 holes, and Rory McIlroy at 2 under par now, 2 shots behind, has a tester to come to save par at the 3rd.
Thank you, Ian. Lap 33 of 70, so almost half race distance in the Canadian Grand Prix, and after this we will be heading to the US Open for sort of the remainder of the evening, really, here on 5 Live Sport. Lap 33 of 70, Verstappen is leading 8 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz, who's 8 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who's 10 seconds ahead of George Russell, and Verstappen on that last lap was a couple of tenths slower than Sainz.
I feel like I'm already losing tyre grip.
Okay, understood.
Okay, well, Max Verstappen in the lead of the Grand Prix saying, I feel like I'm already losing tyre grip. He's been on this tyre 11 laps, 12 laps longer than Carlos Sainz, and we're only just at half race distance, so I would be flabbergasted if Verstappen didn't have to stop again, but it's also looking like maybe Sainz will have to stop again as well if Verstappen is struggling this much already.
Yeah, it could be a graining phase, although you usually can see that from the driver's point of view. It's like when you have a dark band of rubber coming across the tyre that shows lots of little micro tears appearing in the surface. and that can pass. That usually goes away after a while, and you get a second lease of life in the tyre. But it doesn't sound like that's the case with Verstappen. So yeah, it's very early on to be struggling with that hard tyre.
34 of 70. And Verstappen is leading the Grand Prix. He was a tenth slower on that last lap than Carlos Sainz. Hamilton is third, Russell fourth, Ocon fifth. Leclerc is in sixth, still struggling to get past Esteban Ocon for fifth place, but he's making these hard tyres go quite a long way. Still, whether he can pit and do the whole second half of the race on the mediums, we're still finding that a bit of a stretch. Carlos Sainz, we might hear him was just clobbering the curbs basically down at the final chicane, and he's putting a lap on. I think it was Lando Norris that he's coming up to put a lap on Carlos Sainz, but Verstappen is still leading the Grand Prix, and this is just going to become how long can they go before they need to pit again. There's a big queue now forming behind Lance Stroll as well in ninth place. He's 4 tenths ahead of Zhou, who's been trying to pass him for about 5 or 10 laps now. And then it is Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri who has yet to pit. No, sorry, Tsunoda has pitted. He pitted very, very early though, didn't he? Maybe on about lap 4 or 5, something like that, I think, Tsunoda. Lap 10 it was for Tsunoda. And behind him is Ricciardo. So those 4 cars all fighting it out over ninth position, and Zhou's very close now to the back of Stroll, coming down towards turn 1, but the Aston Martin driver manages to stay ahead for the time being. On that last lap, Verstappen was a tenth quicker than Sainz, so they're lapping very similarly still up at the front. Jenny Gao.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at the tyres and what people are hopefully trying to do. They're going to try and push as much as they possibly can at the moment. Lap 34 for the hard tyre for Charles Leclerc, and they're going to have to really hold on to that and see what they can do. Alonso only has 1 hard tyre in his reserve. That's the tyre they've just put on, so he's got no more hard tyres in the stocks. And Leclerc had 2 mediums, 2 hards and 3 softs going to this. Don't think anyone's going to use the soft tyre, but what will Leclerc try and do now? He's just got to go long.
Yeah, and try and do the reverse one stop, I presume, onto the medium tyres, because you have to use at least 2 compounds of tyres, 2 of the soft, medium or hards over the course of a Grand Prix. So Leclerc's only option is to go onto the mediums, but still that's going to be in about, I would guess, at least 10 laps time. Really, he wants to be going onto those. He is still stuck right behind Esteban Ocon, and the problem when you're stuck behind someone like that, less than half a second away, is you're kind of destroying the tyres that you're already on.
Yeah, at least you have to be very careful about it, because you lose a lot of the aero grip that's pushing your car into the ground, and it's very easy to start sliding. And in these hot temperatures, that's the kind of surface overheating that will cause you problems down the road. So just watching Zhou try to set himself up for the back straight a few corners ago, and he was quite hot into the corner, didn't quite manage to get the car turned as quickly as he would have liked, and it just impacts on his exit. He needs to focus on that exit.
Leclerc is the sound you can hear in the Ferrari.
And we are thinking plan D. Let me know what you think.
Whatever, I mean, like that I cannot overtake. I just can't.
So basically Ferrari is saying plan B, which I presume is come in now, stick on a set of mediums, and then do another stop in a bit to go for another set of mediums. And Leclerc saying, well, yeah, whatever, because I can't overtake, so might as well do something different. Does he come into the pits at the end of this lap? Charles Leclerc, Ocon out across the line. No, Leclerc stays in behind. So we'll see what happens. Whether it was Jenny thinks, Jenny thinks it might have been plan D, but whatever. Bravo, Delta, different.
They're on plan D already. Jesus, I mean, it's not been that much going on. Yeah, that's what it would have to be, surely, because plan A going into the race, especially when you're trying to make up places like Leclerc, you can't, generally you would towards less stops, not more, but the degradation does seem to be more than we were expecting here for all the teams. The one stop looks like it's going to be quite tricky to complete, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see more people opting to go for that 2 stop.
It's the Williams reserve driver Jack Aitken alongside me, Jack Nichols, and Jenny Gao.
Yeah, and Pierre Gasly has come into the pits. He's doing his pit stop right now in the AlphaTauri. He came in lap 6 to switch from the medium to the hard tyre to give him a bit of clear air so that he could go out there and be a bit more punchy. I can't see, I think he's gone onto the hard tyre again to try and get to the end of the race. So a two-stop strategy.
Yeah, indeed. So that is... and that's Gasly was another who came in very, very early, wasn't it? So interesting move there from the AlphaTauri squad. We'll see what Verstappen and Sainz decide to do up at the front. George Russell just at the fastest first sector of anybody on the hard tyre. Did a personal best on that last lap, which matched Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen. So suddenly a bit of a turn of pace from George Russell, who's running in 4th place at the moment. Gap is down now to 7.2 seconds compared to Sainz and Verstappen. So it was 9.5. It's now down to 7.2. It's not coming down outrageously quickly, but it is coming down in the battle for the lead of the Grand Prix. And Verstappen's tyres are 12, 11 laps older than Carlos Sainz's. So I'm really interested in this Grand Prix. It's not sort of thrill a minute right now, but I'm very, very interested in it.
Aging like a fine wine. Just looking at Hamilton's lap times as well, he's also gone for a personal best, pretty much matching what George did on the previous lap at 1:17.69, and both the Mercedes turning up the pace. George sets another personal best, going a 10th quicker. Do you think they're also talking about a plan B, potentially a two-stop? Because Hamilton was the other one who was quite early onto the hard, wasn't he?
Well, they've also got a big gap to Esteban Ocon, who's in 5th place. They've got enough time for both of them to pit and come out still ahead of Ocon and not lose track position. So may well be worth it for the Mercedes. And Sainz sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Hamilton and Russell both do personal bests on that lap. So that would suggest that you could be correct, Jack Aitken. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso has pretty much caught the back almost of Ocon and Leclerc, Jenny.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at Alonso. So Gasly just did 32 laps on his hard tyre. Alonso needs to pull out something like 41 laps, I think it is, on a hard tyre. He could maybe do that. Can he pull on and make a one-stop when everybody else around him has to do a two-stop? I think that's what they're trying.
Yeah, well, that was sort of their only option when they didn't come into the pits. So it looked like an odd call from Alpine. Might work out to be sort of okay, but we'll just have to see what transpires. It's certainly a potential. Leclerc is, well, he's always close at the apex, isn't he, to the back of Ocon, but just cannot get the power down in the Ferrari to stay close to the back of the Frenchman. And as I say, Alonso on that last lap, well, actually he was 4/10 slower on that last lap than the two ahead. I was wondering for a small period of time whether Ocon is sort of intentionally backing Leclerc towards Alonso, but I don't think really that would be the theory, because I'm not quite sure what it would achieve. Into turn 1 and 2 they come again. Ocon just ahead of Leclerc. Verstappen is leading the Grand Prix. Second is Carlos Sainz, third is Hamilton, fourth is Russell, fifth is Ocon. Leclerc, Alonso, Bottas, Stroll and Zhou the top 10. And then it's Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Vettel, Magnussen, Albon the top 15. Norris, Gasly and Latifi, the 18 runners. Both Schumacher and Perez have broken down from this Grand Prix. Lap 40 of 70, 31 to go in Canada.
I'm still watching the timing screens, and the Mercedes are beautifully synchronized, both setting personal bests in sector 2 and lapping at quite a similar pace. And it does seem odd, this sudden uptake in pace, given that they've been on these hard tyres for a while, both of them. And it's not normal that you would suddenly get an extra dose of grip halfway through the stint. So it does look like this is a deliberate upping of the pace. Russell doing a 1:17.4, which is only slower than Sainz by half a tenth and quicker than Verstappen by 4/10. So they're really motoring now. And it's pretty painful watching Leclerc as he tries yet again to get close to the back of Ocon in the last chicane.
Yeah, it's so frustrating for the Ferrari driver. If he can clear Leclerc, if he can clear Ocon, I think he's a bit too far away, really, from the Mercedes to challenge them. If he'd cleared Ocon 10 laps ago or whenever it was, maybe he would have had an opportunity. Nicholas Latifi has pitted again onto a new set of hard tyres. It was a bit slow, and then he kind of pulled away when the light was red, and then he had to go back up on the jacks. The front right got attached again, and then away he went. We are seeing slower pit stops this year for for a number of reasons. The tyres are sort of bigger and more difficult to handle, basically, for the mechanics. And there was another scruffy stop, this time from the Williams squad.
They're very heavy, those tyres.
Have you picked one up?
Yes.
One of the new ones?
Yes, they're very heavy.
How high did you, like above your head?
No, that would not be possible for my teeny little chicken arms. But yeah, the mechanics have had to go through a lot of training to just deal with the increase in weight, because, of course, apart from this fact that they're big, the rim takes up percentage-wise a lot more of the weight than the rubber, and by increasing the rim size, they are big old blocks to carry around, and Leclerc boxes.
Okay, into the pits then comes Charles Leclerc for the Ferrari team. He was right up behind Esteban Ocon. He's got to go onto the medium tyres. He's got no choice there. I mean, he could go onto the softs and then onto some mediums later in the Grand Prix, but I'm expecting a set of mediums on the Ferrari. It is indeed. It's slow for Leclerc. He finally gets away, and that was 5.3 seconds, so that's 3 seconds gone in the pit stop. He's waving his hands inside the cockpit, furious with that, and that's going to bring him out behind the whole train of Stroll, Zhou, Tsunoda, and Ricciardo. Those were a huge lost 3 seconds in Charles Leclerc's race. That must have been why they were extending, just to make sure he got out in front of that pack, and he has not. And Leclerc is going to score very few points this afternoon, I fear.
I tell you what, we need to see a replay of that pit stop, but I think the car just slipped off of the rear jack, and there are lots of systems in place to stop that kind of thing happening, but perhaps the jackman just didn't quite get the grip that he needed, and the car dropped before they'd finished gunning the tyres onto the car, and they had to bring it back up, gun the tyres on and go again, and that was terrible.
Tyres really start to drop, mate.
Understood.
So Verstappen is saying the tyres are really starting to go. Sainz isn't exactly going quicker than Verstappen. In fact, he was a tenth slower on that last lap. Mercedes are committing early, I think, to this extra stop that they're going to do. Here comes Ricciardo on Tsunoda down into the chicane. He's not able to make that move. Tsunoda holds on to the 10th place at the moment, then Ricciardo, and then Leclerc. And Leclerc was stuck behind an Alpine. He really wishes he was stuck behind the Alpine now. Verstappen pits. Verstappen pits from the lead of the Grand Prix for the second time today then. It'll be a new set, presumably, of the hard tyres for the Red Bull squad. They're all waiting for him now as he pulls in, swings it in, car goes up on the jacks. Neat and tidy stop for Red Bull, no troubles there at all. 2.4 seconds, 3 seconds quicker than Leclerc managed. He's going to come out behind Lewis Hamilton, but I imagine Hamilton will be pitting fairly soon. Is he going to come out behind Hamilton? They're going to be side by side coming into turn 3, and Hamilton is ahead of Verstappen, and that has cost Verstappen a couple of seconds, I think, over the course of this stint, depending on when Hamilton comes into the pits, and now it depends whether Verstappen can get ahead. I think Red Bull would have been hoping / anticipating that he'd come out in front of Hamilton there. That's played into Sainz's hands a little bit, who now leads the Grand Prix.
Yeah, Hamilton just showed him the door there, because of course you come out of turn 2, the pit exit, you're on the outside line, and Hamilton just had his nose ahead and was entitled to just start driving towards the outside of the track and just squeeze Verstappen onto that exit curb.
Why did you make sure I end up in front?
Didn't have the pace.
Why didn't you make sure I was in front? And the team saying we didn't have the pace, because they're right. Verstappen was lapping at the same pace as the Mercedes, so they couldn't actually pull out the gap. Here comes Verstappen now, though. He's going to get ahead of Hamilton down into the chicane, and it won't have cost him a lot of time. In fact, Hamilton's going to come into the pits now, so it will be a bit of a nuisance that for Verstappen, although actually he'll get the DRS down 2 straight, so maybe that'll almost pay back what he lost. But into the pits comes Hamilton now.
We'll have 2 grumpy drivers there, because Hamilton would have been annoyed that he couldn't just straight line the brake zone of the last corner and enter at full chat. But he pulls into the box at a calm pace, clean pit stop for the Mercedes, and he's out again.
So Carlos Sainz leads the Grand Prix now. He's 10 seconds ahead of Verstappen. He's got tyres that he put on 10 laps after Verstappen did, but Verstappen has just come in for his second pit stop, so a lot to unfold here in the Canadian Grand Prix. Plenty to unfold as well at the US Open. We'll be giving you full coverage in an hour or so, but for now, let's check in with Ian.
Matt Fitzpatrick safely through the first hole in par figures, so he remains at 4 under, as does Will Zalatoris. Company at the top of the leaderboard because Scotty Scheffler has picked up 2 early birdies. The world number 1 also at 4 under par. Drop shot for Rory McIlroy at the 3rd, but he's picked up a birdie at the 4th. McIlroy back to 2 under par within 2 shots of the lead.
Okay, interesting stuff. Thank you very much, Ian. Lap 45 of 70 in the Canadian Grand Prix. Max Verstappen is currently setting the fastest lap of the race. Now he's on a brand new set of hard tyres, and he will be able to go to the end of the Grand Prix on these tyres. But the question is what Sainz and Ferrari do now. Russell pits in the other Mercedes, but Sainz leads. But when does he come in? Jenny Gow.
Yeah, just looking at the tyre mathematics at the moment, 2 of the drivers still haven't come into pit. Now that's Valtteri Bottas in Alfa Romeo and Lance Stroll, the home man, racing for Aston Martin this weekend. They've managed 44 laps on their tyres. So Alonso's got this. He can make this work as a one-stop strategy. Let's see if Alpine can recover something for the man who finished who started this race in 2nd spot.
Yeah, I think 5th is the kind of best that Alpine are going to get out of this, a 5th and 6th, and that looks kind of doable. Almost whatever happens, I would suggest, especially if Alonso can stay out, because Bottas and Stroll haven't pitted, as you say. So I think Alonso's looking pretty strong for a 5th or a 6th place finish. Charles Leclerc has made a move on Yuki Tsunoda. He's also managed to basically drive past Daniel Ricciardo coming into turns 8 and 9. Well, he got to the inside and then was later onto the brakes into turn 8. So all of a sudden, with a bit of traction, Charles Leclerc is carving his way through the field, but it is still cost him a lot of time in that pit stop. Is it unfair to throw that into the Ferrari mistakes, let's say, or the Ferrari weak spots of the season?
The growing catalogue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I mean, the people know how important pit stops are. Here's Sainz on the radio.
The safety car window is open.
Okay, we will go to happy, yeah?
Happy, yeah.
So that's Sainz being told the safety car window is open, i.e. if there's a safety car now, we pit, we lead the Grand Prix. Simple as that. But how long will that window be open for? Because Verstappen was a second quicker than Sainz on that last lap. So that's going to be interesting. Because I don't think that window is going to be open for long. It might even be closed already, to be perfectly honest with you. Yuki Tsunoda's under pressure from Daniel Ricciardo in their fight over 11th place, and Leclerc is now on the back of Zhou in their fight over 9th position, and Ricciardo does get Tsunoda coming into the chicane. So Ricciardo in the McLaren up into 11th. Charles Leclerc now gets ahead of Zhou into the first corner, and the Alfa Romeo driver drops down to 10th place. Leclerc is up into 9th, but if he was ahead of Stroll, he'd have been carving through the field and closing it. I think he could have had a 6th place in this race, Leclerc, potentially.
And he's still off strategy compared to a lot of the cars around him being on the alternate. So almost everybody now, except for Norris, is on the hard tyre. Leclerc is the only one out there in the field apart from Norris, who is on the medium. So he's got relatively more work to do. It's a longer way for him to go.
Okay, so we are happy for you to push to the end. As I say, just watch your slip for the surface steps, but the wear will not be a limitation.
So that's Verstappen being told you can push to the end of the Grand Prix. Don't wheel spin too much, basically, but we're not worried that the tyre you'll run out of tyre.
Yeah, just the overheating, and when you overheat the tyre, the rubber gets into a temperature range where it's not going to adhere to the surface as well. And we're seeing Leclerc now breezing past the acid. Oh, I say that. No, sorry. I thought the acid was doing a very audacious breaking point of Stroll actually just going in for his pit stop. But yeah, so that's what we were talking about with the rubber overheating when you're slipping in the traction zones, and Leclerc working that tyre very hard as he's overtaking these cars. He's going to have to be even more careful with the medium tyre of that.
Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, a 1 minute 16.7, half a second quicker than Carlos Sainz, the fastest lap of the race. What do Ferrari do here with Sainz? Surely they can't keep him out for the whole of the Grand Prix. Well, in fact, we heard, didn't we, a few moments ago when they were talking about, whatever the plan is. He said, yeah, okay, but hard tyres, right? I.e. we're going on to a new set of hards. Daniel Ricciardo was left not a huge amount of room by Yuki Tsunoda into the chicane. Enough, but not a great deal. And the job was done, and Tsunoda's off now. Tsunoda's off on the exit of turn 2.
Sorry, I'm out.
Now this is Sainz's chance to pit, because that will be either a full safety car or a virtual safety car. He's in the final sector. I would suggest it'll be a full one, and Sainz is coming down the back straight now. The gap is only 7.5 seconds though, so this is a bit of a gamble for Ferrari, because if they take it and the window isn't there, then they will come out behind Verstappen in a slower car. It's the full safety car that's deployed.
That still works for them, and that luckily...
Sainz pits now. So Carlos Sainz into the pit lane. This could be the race-defining moment. Oh, Tsunoda's just come out of the pit lane and shunted straight on into the wall on his way out of the pits. That is a bit of a rookie one for Tsunoda. Into the pits now comes Carlos Sainz. Off go the old tyres, on go the new tyres. Is it a clean stop? It's a bit slow for Ferrari. It's not horrific, but they've lost about a second, and I think that's Verstappen back in the lead of the Grand Prix. It is. Verstappen takes the lead with 21 laps to go. Sainz emerges in second place. Even without the slow stop, I don't think they had the margin to come out in front of Verstappen, and Verstappen is back in the lead of the race. Sainz's tyres will be newer, but not dramatically newer.
I'm a little bit surprised they didn't think to maybe gamble it with the medium. I know Sainz asked for the hard, but it's now late in the race. You've got a lot more rubber on the track that Jenny rightly mentioned was green at the start of this race.
You got no pressure from behind.
Yeah, fuel load is down, so the tyres are just having an easier and easier time of it. They know that they might have to try something a little bit different to get that pace advantage on Verstappen, but yeah, they opted for the safe option.
Safety car deployed. Look, Tsunoda in the barriers. Not a huge crash. He's climbing out of the car. Jenny Gao.
Yeah, Esteban Ocon's just coming on lap 50, as has Alonso. So Alonso comes in under the safety car to try and get a cheap pit stop. So that's both of the Alpines coming in. A lot of cars trying to come in here. They can come in and out of the pit stop in 10 seconds, maybe 9 seconds if they get it right. So that's why they're all taking this action now. And I think that might be for Ferrari a get-out-of-jail-free card for them. They didn't have to think about it. As soon as they saw the safety car and Tsunoda coming off the track, they knew what they had to do. They just had to pit him. Now they can see what they can do and hunt down.
Yeah, safety car deployed, as I say. It was a difficult one for Ferrari. 2 laps earlier, and Sainz has the lead of the Grand Prix. Slowish stop for Daniel Ricciardo as he comes into the pits. I'll give you the full order once this is all shuffled through. We've got 20 laps to go in the Canadian Grand Prix here on 5 Live. Then we'll be heading to the US Open. Verstappen is leading the Grand Prix. Sainz is in second place, and it is a safety car restart. That is the good news for Sainz, in that he doesn't have a huge amount of ground to close in. Tsunoda getting a round of applause on his way back to the garage, but it was
It was a mistake of an inexperienced driver.
It's the kind of thing you do on the PlayStation. First time you drive out the pits in Canada, come out down towards oops, and then straight in the barriers.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see a replay of it now, but it just looked like the tyre is warm out the blankets, but it's not fully up to temperature, and he just asked too much of it on the brakes going into that right-hander. Locked up, didn't manage to get the front right unlocked, and just skated it off the road. And once you're on the grass, there's not a lot of runoff there.
No, absolutely not. So Tsunoda out of the Grand Prix, joining Mick Schumacher and Sergio Perez, who both had mechanical problems. 20 laps to go. Safety car deployed. Max Verstappen leads. Carlos Sainz is second. Lewis Hamilton is third. George Russell is fourth. Ocon is fifth. Alonso is sixth. Leclerc is seventh. Eighth is Bottas. Ninth is Vettel. 10th is Zhou. Ricciardo, Magnussen, Stroll, Gasly and Albon the top 15. Norris and Latifi the 17 runners. Jack Aitken.
I was just going to say, we were talking about why Sainz went with the hard and not the medium. Well, that's just exactly what the 2 Alpines have done. They've taken the medium tyre, and that car, it's got a lot of straight line speed. Could they trouble Russell and the Mercedes ahead? And Leclerc is going to have to try and pass not one but 2 of them. He's had trouble with both of them at various points in this race, so it's going to be tough for him, I think, on the hard tyre.
Yeah, an interesting final 20 laps coming up, Jenny Gao.
To clarify who's on the mediums then, so Ocon came in and pitted just now. He's on mediums, as is Alonso, both Alpines, as you're saying. 9 laps in on a stint on the mediums is Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, and Bottas just behind him also on the mediums.
Safety car deployed, Max. Safety car deployed. Dash positive, dash positive. Science is in.
Advise on brakes and tyres.
This is George Russell.
So we can see a split now on the brakes, the opposite side. Keep working those fronts, and we want high pressure events.
This is Charles Leclerc.
How many cars will get in front of us if we stop?
It will be 3 cars. 3 cars.
This is Sebastian Vettel.
Yep, copy, mate. We'll have a quick look. So just keep on your delta. So if we stop, Sebastian, what would you do? Flap, please. Flap adjust. Go up.
Hamilton's radio.
Are we at risk of Leclerc now?
No, so
Give me some information, guys.
No, so Leclerc's already stopped, so should be a threat to him. He's currently at P7.
A little selection of radio replays from whenever the safety car was deployed. Nothing particularly remarkable in all of that, I think, except Hamilton wanting to know where Leclerc was. Jenny Gow, had you finished your point?
No, I hadn't. And
please do.
Thank you so much. Lap 32 on these hard tyres for Vettel, so they didn't pit him, even though he was asking if they could. So he stays out there on the hard tyres in P9 currently. Other people who came in and pit, Stroll came in, he's on 3-lap medium tyres now, his first stop of the session. And Norris came in again. Bad day, I think, for Norris. He had to take a different power unit this morning, more team radio.
My pace to the others. Give us a bit more of a picture, guys.
So yeah, we were matching the leaders. In fact, corrected. Yeah, you were one of the fastest guys out there.
You think that's pushing too hard on the new tyre?
Yeah, we think with this safety car, that's just going to buy us margin, so we should be good to the end. It's a much shorter stint than that first hard tyre. Plus, we've got this safety car to reset everything.
So that's Hamilton getting some information from Pete Bonington. A bit more, Jenny?
Yeah, sure, why not? We're on a safety car, no one cares anyway. They've gone to make a cup of tea. Medium, 8 laps for Norris, and I was saying they had to replace his power unit overnight after problems in qualifying, so they didn't get penalised because it was a different power unit, but the one that he had yesterday has been sent back to base in Woking to try and get a fix on it, so that's a bit of a problem for them going forward potentially. But yet Norris P16 at the moment. This is a painful weekend for him, and Ricciardo 11, so they're not in the points at the moment for McLaren, so far from ideal, I would suggest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think someone who this has all worked out for is Valtteri Bottas. I don't know when he pitted or whether it was under the safety car just now.
Yes.
And that's his only pit stop has come under the safety car. So, and I think the same is true of I think it's just Bottas that did that in the end. Maybe Stroll as well, but it's really worked out for Bottas because he was looking like finishing quite a way behind his teammate Joe. Jenny?
Unlucky for Stroll. He came in on lap 46, safety car came out, and lap 50 by my reckoning. So
okay, yeah.
He held on. They thought, no, got to pit him. And if they'd have just been brave and held on for another 4 laps, they could have done exactly what Bottas has done. But yeah, as you say, Bottas making the most of that. He must be delighted for the team.
Yeah, indeed. So the lapped cars are being allowed to overtake the safety car now, and we'll be getting underway, I would imagine, at the end of the following lap, with Max Verstappen leading the way, Carlos Sainz in second, Lewis Hamilton in third, George Russell in fourth. Now Hamilton, here's some more radio from him.
Are we going to be at risk of the guys on the stop the tyre?
No, we think you've got the pace.
So Hamilton basically asking, are the Alpines in 5th and 6th, are they going to be coming to attack us? And the team saying, no, we think you've got the pace. And they kind of, I don't think Mercedes have the pace to get involved with Sainz and Verstappen. But they'll be there, they'll be close enough, I think. Let's quickly head to Ian Carter while we're under safety car.
Scotty Scheffler's hit the front here with 3 birdies inside his first 4 holes. The world number 1 at 5 under par now, 1 ahead of Matt Fitzpatrick, but the Englishman with a good birdie chance coming at the 3rd. John Rahm and Will Zalatoris both at 3 under par. Rory McIlroy back to 1 under. He's just dropped a shot at the short par 4 5th.
Thank you, Ian. We have got 17 laps to go in the Canadian Grand Prix. Then we'll be heading over to the US Open for the rest of the evening. Jenny Gow.
Beautiful day here in Montreal, just a couple of white clouds, a little bit windy, but the sun is shining down on everybody, and it's 22 degrees now. Kevin Magnussen, I think, lost out in that section. He's 46 laps into his stint on hard tyres, and they chose at Haas not to come in and pit him, so he's obviously going to the end of the race now. But those are very, very old tyres, and he's currently in 12th place. I can only see him moving backwards and not forwards, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, his race got scuppered, didn't it, on about lap, I can't remember, must have been lap 8 or 9 or something, when he was forced to come in and change his front wing by the race director. 8 was it? Thank you. So that's frustrating. Right, safety car is coming in, and Verstappen is going to lead the Grand Prix. 2nd will be Carlos Sainz, 3rd Lewis Hamilton, 4th George Russell, and we're not expecting any more pit stops in the final 17 laps. Well, it'll be 16 laps when the race gets going again, and so it'll be won or lost on track here. How hard is Carlos Sainz going to push for his first ever Formula 1 victory, and to help his teammate and his team in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship? Verstappen is taking his time, weaving from left to right. Carlos Sainz is keeping the car straight, trying to react as quickly as possible to whenever Verstappen floors it. They're coming down towards the final chicane. Verstappen, as ever, leaving it pretty late. In fact, he might be waiting until the exit of the chicane now. He's taken so long. There he goes. Verstappen gets on the power, gets the drive, has a little bit of a wiggle coming out of the final corner, and Sainz is going to be quite close here, coming down towards turn 1. Racing back underway. Verstappen, though, holds the lead into the first corner. Sainz in 2nd. It's 3rd for Lewis Hamilton. It's 4th for George Russell. It's 5th for Ocon, who was under big pressure from Fernando Alonso. Charles Leclerc will want to try and get past the Alpines. 5th is realistically the best he can achieve in the remainder of this Grand Prix, unless he can get ahead some of the Mercedes as well. But that's got to be the Ferrari's minimum target, and if that's the case, he would only lose an extra 10 points to Verstappen in the championship fight, which would not be too bad. It would go from 34 points to 44 points. Not ideal, don't get me wrong, but reasonable damage limitation for Leclerc, having started at the back of the grid. Jack Aitken, the Williams reserve driver, is alongside me, and it was a clean getaway from Verstappen in the end on the restart.
Yeah, he did have a little wiggle, like you say, out the last corner, but it wasn't enough to give Sainz to run on him into turn 1. And he's now already putting a bit of distance between himself, the gap up to a 2nd. If he can hold that going into the next laps when the DRS does get activated, that'll be perfect.
Here's an attack from Valtteri. It's Joe. It's Joe Guan Yu trying to get ahead of Sebastian Vettel down the back straight towards the chicane. He's right underneath the rear wing. Vettel covers the inside. Joe goes to the outside, and Vettel holds the place. It looked as though Joe had got the drive, but to be fair, even before the safety car, he was complaining he didn't have enough straight line speed to get ahead of the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll, and that seems to be the situation again. He's attacking again, coming down into turn 1, but still, the Chinese driver can't get ahead of Sebastian Vettel. He scored points, did Joe, on his first ever race in Formula 1 in Bahrain earlier this year, but he's retired from 3 of the last 4, so some points here would be a very good result for him. Lap 56 of 70.
Yeah, they're still waiting for the DRS to be reactivated after the safety car. So he's got a little bit more of a job to get past the Aston Martin, which seems to be pretty decent in a straight line so far, but Vettel already struggling a little bit on those tyres, probably wishing that he had pitted, but he's got the track position. That's what's important right now.
Big winner from this Grand Prix so far is Charles Leclerc, who's made up 12 places. Alonso, other than Kevin Magnussen, has lost the most in that sort of top group, losing 4 spots. The sound you can hear is Charles Leclerc coming up the back straight, and he's just nowhere near Alonso. DRS isn't enabled just yet, actually, so it'll be maybe at the end of this or start of this next lap, the DRS will be enabled. Takes a load more curve on the way into that final chicane, does Charles Leclerc, compared to Fernando Alonso, and he is pretty close down towards turn 1. I think he's also got fresher tyres than he had before, of course, and he was really struggling for traction out of the slow corners onto the long back straight. Fastest lap of the Grand Prix is set by Carlos Sainz. He is within DRS range here of Max Verstappen. Joe has got ahead of Sebastian Vettel. So Joe gets ahead of Vettel and up into 9th place. Alex Albon gets ahead of, Magnussen got ahead of Albon got ahead of Gasly and Stroll got ahead of Magnussen. So those are a couple of shuffles outside of the top 10. Verstappen and Sainz both trading fastest sectors here at the moment. A really, really intense fight up at the front. Joe got ahead of Sebastian Vettel down into turn 1. He went to the outside, didn't have an overlap, but just on the fresher tyres, was later on the brakes, went right round the outside. That was good stuff.
Yeah, good move. He didn't have the advantage of DRS to give him that extra speed, like you say, so he had to do all the hard work on the brakes, and he did it. Fair play to him. Sainz
is in DRS range here of Max Verstappen for the race lead. Coming down into the chicane, noses to the inside. Not close enough to make a move that time, but he'll get the DRS on the second run. Down towards turn 1. Max Verstappen is under pretty big pressure for the lead of the Canadian Grand Prix. Down into the first corner, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Can't get through just yet. He's looking for his maiden Formula One victory as Carlos Sainz. Many have done it here before, including Lewis Hamilton in 2007, Gilles Villeneuve in 1978, Jean Alesi in 1995, and a couple of others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but Sainz wants to be the latest to be added to this list. Robert Kubica in 2008, remembered another one.
On it, just on it.
Here's Ocon's radio.
Okay, Fernando still has DRS, good job. If for whatever reason Fernando comes past, let's just make sure Leclerc doesn't, okay? Let's make sure Leclerc stays behind us.
Yeah, copy, trust you guys.
It's all good, it's all good.
So that's Ocon being told, if Alonso comes past us in the two Alpines, swap position for 5th and 6th, let's keep Charles Leclerc behind. In fact, Leclerc is very close to the back of Fernando Alonso. Carlos Sainz is about 7/10 away from Verstappen as they exit onto the back straight. It's now 0.8 of a second, so he's a little bit too far back again, I think, coming out of the hairpin. Leclerc has got ahead of Fernando Alonso, and I think that's going into the hairpin. I think he's going to be a little bit too far back from Ocon to make an attack this time. They're coming down now towards the chicane at the end of the back straight. Leclerc is closing and closing and closing, gets to within 0.6 of a second of Esteban Ocon before they get into the chicane, but isn't able to make the move this time and sits in behind Ocon in the fight over 5th place. So that's got to be Leclerc's aim, to get up into 5th position, and Verstappen is leading the Grand Prix, and Verstappen's lead at the line is just half a second between he and Carlos Sainz. Incredibly close fight for the lead of the Canadian Grand Prix with just 12 laps to go. Let's see if Sainz is going to be close this time. He's only 0.6 back as they come through the chicane at turns 8 and 9. This is going to be the closest that Sainz has been throughout the entirety of the Grand Prix. How quick is he going to be? Oh, he's so late on the brakes into their hairpin. Gets on the power fairly nicely, and he's 0.2 closer than he was last time to the back of Max Verstappen. Down the back straight, DRS pops open. Sainz starts to close in on the back of the Red Bull. The Red Bull does have good straight line speed, but Sainz is in the slipstream as they get into the braking zone. A little nose to the inside, and he's not quite close enough. Down towards the first corner now as they come across the line to start lap 60 of 70, and he's still not quite there. Charles Leclerc has just skipped through the runoff area at the exit of the chicane, so he doesn't manage to get past Fernando Alonso and is get past Esteban Ocon, and so he remains in 6th position. 11 laps to go here in Canada. Let's head back to the US Open. Ian.
This is shaping up intriguingly now, Jack. Scotty Scheffler at 5 under par has been joined by Matt Fitzpatrick on that mark at the top of the leaderboard. The Englishman with a birdie at the 3rd. They're 2 shots clear of Jon Rahm, the world number 2 and defending champion. And Rory McIlroy's bounced back with a birdie at the 6th. At 2 under par, he's within 3 of the lead.
Well, what a busy day of sport it's been here on 5 Live, starting with the cricket earlier on. We've had the Swimming World Championships, Canadian Grand Prix, and we'll be finishing it off later on with the US Open. But we have got just over 10 laps to go, and Sainz is really close to the back of Verstappen every single lap here, Jack Aitken. Verstappen's not able to get away.
No, it's always in that 6 to 7/10 range as they come out of the hairpin, but it looks like the Red Bull has just got a little bit more of the legs on the Ferrari. Even with the DRS, it takes them a while to close down the Red Bull down the straight. He really needs to be within half a second coming out of that hairpin to have a proper run at him. But this is great pace that we're seeing from Sainz. He's come alive with this new hard tyre, which is, of course, a little bit younger than Verstappen's, but it's not a significant amount.
No, exactly. This is a man fired up to try and take his first ever Formula One win, Carlos Sainz, against the reigning champion and championship leader, Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc made the move on Ocon and is up into 5th position, went to the inside at the hairpin. Nice clean move from Ocon. Jenny Gao.
Yeah, I'm standing right at the end of the very long straight before the hairpin. Before the chicane, and it's fantastic to watch. Sainz all over the back of Verstappen. Leclerc managing to get around those 2 Alpine cars as well. And I tell you what, Vettel is falling backwards. Stroll's just got in front of him in the other Aston Martin. Bad choice not to come in and pit when he had the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't look like either Aston Martin are going to score any points today, but after a difficult qualifying session, that wasn't a particular surprise. But they are currently in 11th and 12th places. Sainz is a little bit further back this time as they come down the back straight. Lewis Hamilton is lying in 3rd, looking for his 2nd podium finish of the season. He had a 3rd place in the opening race of the year in Bahrain, but it looks like he's going to have a 3rd place here. But who is going to come out on top up at the front? Across the line again to start lap 62 of 70 in the Canadian Grand Prix. And Carlos Sainz in the Scarlet Ferrari is right underneath the Red Bull as they swing through the right-hander of turn 2. The St. Lawrence Seaway just on their left-hand side, and then into the next right-left at turn 3. And this is a lot of fun because this is relentless. There's no tyre saving going on here or energy management or anything like that.
All guns blazing.
Yeah.
The positions 3, 4, 5 and probably 6 are all fairly set now. Hamilton and Russell looking fairly comfortable in the hards on the Mercedes, kind of in no man's land. Leclerc as well now that he's got past the 2 Alpines. So this battle between Verstappen and Sainz is the main action happening on track.
Sainz has just dropped away a little bit in the middle sector this time around. He's still going to be, I think, within DRS range, but he's slightly further back. Oh, he might not be, you know. It's just crept up to over a second, the gap between Verstappen and Sainz might have just fallen out of DRS range as they come down the back straight. He's still going to get a bit of a tow and a bit of a slipstream, but that might be a crucial moment in the Grand Prix for Carlos Sainz. Out across the line, and he was 0.7 seconds back at the line, so he's got a lot of work to do if he wants to try and get back to the rear of the Red Bull car. Hamilton's still running in 3rd, Jenny Gao.
Yeah, he is, and I think he's looking on at this battle in front of him between Verstappen and Sainz and just thinking, well, you know, if just 2 of them happen to come together, I'm here to collect the prize. He's won 7 times around this circuit here in Montreal. It's one of his favourites. He hated Friday, but he's going to have a big smile on his face after this race. I think that car handling much better at the moment.
Which I'm surprised by, actually, because Friday was a dry day of running and Hamilton absolutely hated the car and it was terrible. Yesterday, it felt a lot better, but because it was raining, basically, so it changed. But all of a sudden, Jenny, he's happy again.
Yeah, Friday they did so much experimenting to try and get that car working better. So they put a new floor on it, had a big hole in it. They did everything they could to give him a better car. It didn't work for him. They went back to plan A. They knew the car in race pace would be better. Better it is.
Running in 3rd place with George Russell in 4th. Charles Leclerc is closing in on Russell by almost a second a lap, so it might not be too long before Leclerc is able to put Russell under pressure, but we haven't got long to go in the Grand Prix. Fastest lap of the race from Carlos Sainz. So I said he needed to do a bit of work to catch back up to Verstappen. He's done that work well. Here comes Lance Stroll on the back of Daniel Ricciardo for 10th place. Stroll gets up into the points then. So the Aston Martin team up into the points. Everybody's queued up behind Esteban Ocon. There's a big queue. Ocon, Alonso, Bottas, Zhou and Stroll. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, all together. Lap 64 of 70, so 6.5 laps to go in the Canadian Grand Prix. And Sainz did well to get back within DRS range and is, although he's dropped back a little bit in the middle part of this lap.
Tell you what, Hamilton behind is just going to be sitting there And it's amazing when you're the driver behind a battle like this, your allegiance is just firmly with the driver behind. Go on, stick a move on, try something.
So you think Hamilton's allegiance is not with Max Verstappen?
Well, so, yeah, I mean, there might be some bias already in the system.
Yeah, exactly. Hamilton then running in third place, watching Sainz and Verstappen fighting up in front. Sainz closing in into the chicane once more, through the right, through the left. No mistakes from either of them. They both go so close to the barriers on the exit. Yeah, this is what I love about motor racing, is just two drivers absolutely going for it. They're not overtaking, they're not swapping position, but they're just driving around at 200 miles an hour right by the wall on the absolute limit, inches from their race being over.
Just wringing everything they can out of their machines right now. You can see it was almost a four-wheel drift for Verstappen as he came off the last apex of the chicane and bouncing towards the wall, just skimming it with his rear tyres. Beautiful to watch. And Carlos Sainz keeping a fairly consistent gap now, around 0.8 of a second. He does tend to claw a bit back through this middle sector and get a bit closer going into the final hairpin, but yeah, he seems to struggle to get into that last half a second gap with the dirty air coming off of Verstappen's car.
Here they come into the hairpin once more. What's this going to do to the championship, Jenny?
Well, at the moment, if it ends like this, Verstappen would be on 175 points for collecting a race win. Perez, no points for him today. He'd be on 129 points. But Charles Leclerc, fast approaching, 126 points. He'd still be in third, but closing that gap all the time at the top towards, well, not closing it, but trying to close it.
Yeah, Verstappen would extend his championship lead, but 5 laps to go. It would change if Sainz is able to get ahead of Verstappen. We've seen race leaders collide before. 1992, Nigel Mansell and Ayrton Senna collided while fighting for the lead of the Grand Prix. I think we even saw Nigel Mansell, was it 92? Mansell broke down at the very last corner.
The very last lap on the back straight, yeah.
So I think that was 92 for Nigel Mansell. So plenty of last lap drama. In fact, 2011. There was a Red Bull leading, Sebastian Vettel, and on the very last lap he got on a damp patch and allowed Jenson Button through to win the longest Formula 1 race of all time. So plenty of last lap action here in the past.
I think we stay where we are, just for a straight line issue.
But even with a straight line issue, I'm 100 times faster this weekend.
Okay, understood.
So Alonso is in 7th place. He is behind Esteban Ocon in 6th place. Now, he has been complaining on the radio about engine problems over the course of the Grand Prix. The team have said, right, stay behind Ocon. Alonso's saying, well, hang on. I've been 100 times faster this weekend. I'm not sure if that is mathematically accurate, but he's kind of right.
Yeah, I think 100 times might be exaggerating a little bit, but he's been super strong all weekend. The race has really gotten away from him today, and it's a real shame because we said at the start of the broadcast we'd love to see him lead the race and get a great result, and it just hasn't happened for him. And now he's stuck behind Ocon. He's been within like half a second of him for the last few laps, just sitting on his tail. He's also got Bottas and Zhou right behind him as well, so it's not like they've got a lot of room to breathe.
No, that's true. Maybe they're suggesting if Alonso gets ahead of Ocon, maybe they've both got straight line speed and they're sort of keeping each other in the DRS here potentially. Verstappen leading the Canadian Grand Prix with just 3 and a bit laps to go in Canada, and Verstappen is ahead, just under a second ahead of Carlos Sainz, who has done really well to stay this close to the back of Verstappen for this length of time, to be honest, because it's really challenging to stay in the dirty air of the cars in front. But Sainz has managed it, and he now is just hoping for any little error from Max Verstappen. Across the line they come. Verstappen extends his lead a little bit on this lap, but only by a 10th of a second. 3 laps to go. Verstappen is leading. Sainz is chasing him down. Hamilton is 3rd. Russell is 4th. Leclerc is not going to catch Russell. The gap is 2.7 seconds between the Mercedes in 4th and the Ferrari in 5th. Ocon is in 6th. Alonso 7th. Bottas and Zhou are in 8th and 9th. Lance Stroll is 10th in the Aston Martin. And then we've got Ricciardo, Vettel, Albon, Gasly and Norris, the top 15. Latifi and Magnussen, the 17 drivers still running. After this, we're going to be heading to the US Open for the rest of the evening. But Verstappen versus Sainz is the battle for the win. Not dissimilar to Sainz in Monaco a couple of weeks ago, chasing down the other Red Bull, that time of Sergio Perez, but overtaking is a little bit more possible in Montreal, is a lot of it more possible in Montreal, even though he doesn't quite have the traction out of the corner, does he, Carlos Sainz? He's close-ish this time around, 0.7 of a second back, so he'll be a little closer than he has been for the previous few laps. Noses to the inside, but he is too far away to make the move. He sends it in so hot, clobbers the curbs on the inside. Sainz is giving it absolutely everything. That was huge commitment.
That was proper airtime that he got there. I mean, I was about to say, he's now got 2 laps to go. This is the time when he needs to be thinking, I've got to do something different. This isn't working. You know, he's staying in that sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 temps window, and he can't get any closer. He needs to think about the energy deployment. Can he do something different, store it up for a lap, do an all-out lap at the end to try and get as close as he can into that final hairpin? Does he need to change something with the driving? Anything is such a hard position to be in, but that's what he has to do.
I think he's closer than he has been at any point coming into turns 8 and 9. It's just half a second as he swings through the right and swings through the left. He's absolutely on the edge here, Carlos Sainz, and this could be his best opportunity of the Grand Prix on the penultimate lap of the race to get ahead of Max Verstappen. Late on the brakes, into the heaven at turn 10, too late. A tiny mistake from Sainz. He was absolutely on the limit, and he has made the tiniest of errors. It cost him 2-3 of a second, but that could be enough to mean he doesn't get his chance to win the Canadian Grand Prix. 1 lap to go as they come across the line now. Verstappen leading. Second is Sainz. There's still only half a second between them as we start the final lap of the Grand Prix, but he's still only 0.4 of a second away.
He knew that he was close that lap. He knew that was his best chance. You're so finely tuned into your reference points. You know how close you are to the car ahead. And he just overcooked it into that final hairpin, the most important corner to get the overtake done. He's now 8.5 temps back. He's going to claw a little bit back through this middle sector like he always does on Verstappen. Will it be enough to get close again?
He's about 0.4 further back than he was last time out. The back end trying to get away, and I think that's the chance gone for Carlos Sainz. Verstappen just needs to negotiate the next 5 corners, and he will win the Canadian Grand Prix. Sainz has pushed him as hard as he possibly could. He got really close on that previous lap, but just the tiniest of errors into turn 10. Verstappen comes through the hairpin now, and he is going to be clear. The grandstands get on their feet and cheer Max Verstappen out across the line. Sainz is done. He's not going to take his first victory. It's going to be another win this season for Max Verstappen. He has already won 5 so far this year. He is about to make it 6 from 9 through the chicane, out across the line. A spirited defense, an attempt from Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, but Max Verstappen wins again. Max Verstappen extends his championship lead, winning the Canadian Grand Prix after a thrilling fight with Carlos Sainz. And Hamilton is across the line in 3rd for his best result of the season, or joint best result of the season. All of a sudden, the Alpines are under pressure from Valtteri Bottas into the final corner, but they managed to hold on. Leclerc is across the line in 5th. Ocon is 6th. It is 7th for Alonso, 8th for Bottas, 9th and a career best for Joe, and 10th will be Lance Stroll. But another win for Verstappen. His advantage over Charles Leclerc now in the championship extends by 10 points. It was 34, it's now 44.
What if Sainz had that safety car 1 lap earlier and he'd had track position? They looked so quick in those last 10 laps. It was an incredible pace from Sainz to sit in the dirty air of Verstappen.
That is the checkered flag, Max. Oh, what an end. Well done, mate.
Well done, mate. I'm not sure you can hear us. We can't hear you, but that was amazing. Withstood all the pressure. Brilliant, brilliant drive.
Save yourself for the interviews, Max. We can't hear you, mate. As Christian said, though, big delivery under big pressure. Drove like a champion today, mate. Well done.
So Verstappen's radio back to the team appears not to be working, so that probably hasn't helped him in the closing stages of the Grand Prix, I would suggest. Sainz finishing second, and third for Lewis Hamilton, a Red Bull, a Ferrari and a Mercedes on the podium. And I think it's a bit encouraging that for Mercedes. Obviously a third and fourth is literally a good result. Here's Sainz's radio.
And P2, good job.
Yeah, I tried everything there, guys.
Bravo Carlos, mancato poco. Bravo così.
Yeah, I think, you know, Lewis was pretty over the moon with fourth in quali yesterday, so a podium today has got to be a good result for them. And yeah, George doing a good drive to come in just behind him in P4 as well.
And after starting 8th, George Russell on the grid, Leclerc in 5th. We'll be hearing from the top 3 in a moment as they make their way down towards Parc Fermé. Here's Hamilton's radio.
Great stuff then, Lewis. Great stuff. That's P3, mate. Well-deserved podium. Really awesome.
Great effort, guys. Thank you so much. Car was a little bit better today. We got something here. Let's keep pushing.
The car was a little better today, says Hamilton. So obviously not night and day for the Mercedes team, but at least something a little better. Max Verstappen then hauls himself out of the cockpit. Another win, Jenny Gao, and an extension of the championship lead.
Yeah, I sat behind him, as he say. He stands on the front of his car. He puts both fists up in the air, then one, then another. Kind of chaos down here. He just runs towards me, into his engineers and mechanics who are standing here in the melee of people. It's an absolute squash and a squish down here, but there is Carlos Sainz. He's just getting out. Lewis Hamilton as well. Sainz gave it everything. What a commendable battle for him and Ferrari.
Yeah, great drive from Carlos Sainz to finish in second place. Fascinated to hear what he has to say. Look, I really enjoyed that race. There was no overtake for the lead, but I don't know, for me it's the threat of the overtake that I like. I don't know, I like the overtakes as well. Exactly, I'm all about the anticipation. Okay, Verstappen wins the Grand Prix, then Sainz in second. And apologies if you heard a bit of language there, from the bad language specifically from the Ferrari gang. They're all congratulating Carlos Sainz, hugs around, and that's two very, very nearlies from Sainz, looking for his first race win. And quietest race we've ever had, says Christian Horner to Verstappen, because there was no radio. But it's becoming a bit of a sort of monkey on the back for Carlos Sainz, because he's getting so close now to that first win.
Yeah, I mean, one hand in one and one in the other, because it was a great race for him today. I think his performance was fantastic, considering that I do believe the Red Bull was a stronger car this weekend, and he fought back from a quiet race in the first half and took his opportunity, or at least tried, and came so close. I really think it was a great performance, so he should take confidence from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice one. Nice one, mate, says Max Verstappen. Carlos Sainz swearing, so apologies again for that. But they look like they had a fun race out there, with Verstappen taking the win. Second place for Carlos Sainz, third for Lewis Hamilton, and we're going to hear from those three now, from the winner of the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix, Jenson Button.
Congratulations, Max. That was a hard-fought victory. It looked at the beginning that it was looking a bit easier for you, but that safety car at the end put you on a bit of a pressure, Carlos.
Yeah, the safety car didn't help. I think overall they were very quick in the race, so it would have been really tough for me to close that gap to the end, even on fresher tires. But yeah, it was really exciting at the end. I mean, I was giving it everything I had. Of course, Carlos was doing the same. You know, following is tricky around here, but I could see he was pushing, charging, pushing. But of course, naturally, when you're on the DRS, it's a bit easier to charge. So yeah, the last few laps were a lot of fun.
I guess you were very thankful for the straight line speed of the Red Bull round here.
Yeah, luckily this year we seem pretty quick on the straight, so that helps a lot.
The strategy, it looked very tricky out there to really understand what you should do with the virtual safety cars. Obviously, you stopped very early in the race, and we're looking towards a two-stop. Were you ever worried that you weren't able to catch up with Carlos?
I mean, overall, I think they were very strong in the race. So yes, it would have been tricky to catch up. But then, of course, the safety car came out, so they had fresher tires. So then I was like, well, I think I would have preferred attacking instead of defending, but luckily it worked out.
Great job, Max.
Thank you.
Carlos, I mean, obviously you were gunning for the victory there, and it was so close. It looked like the hairpin, one lap to the end. You got really close and went a little bit deep. But you must still be happy with this result.
Yeah, I was pushing flat out. I mean, I wasn't leaving any inch to the walls and the braking. Well, I was pushing everything with the battery. I tried everything to pass Max, but today we just didn't have enough pace delta, you know, to get him close enough in the hairpin to then get him a bit out of line into the chicane. But yeah, the positive thing is that we were quicker, we were faster all race. It's just that little bit more to overtake around here.
It must give you confidence, though. The last couple of races haven't been the easiest for yourself or Ferrari. To come here and have that speed and be fighting for a victory.
Yeah, I'm particularly happy with the race pace, with the way we managed to put pressure on Max during the whole race, and you know, timing of the pit stops I think was right. Honestly, we tried everything, and we were very, very close to winning today. So I will take the positives and yeah, keep trying in the next one.
Cheers. Thanks, Carlos. Lewis, it's great to see a smile on your face. I know it's not been the easiest year for you. After years of dominance, it must have been tough, but today, this is a good step forward for you, isn't it?
How you going, Montreal? We've had such an awesome crowd here this weekend. It's quite overwhelming, honestly, to get this third place. It's been such a battle this year. With the car and as a team, but we continue to stay vigilant and focused and never giving up, and that's something I'm so proud of and inspired by my crew. So thank you to everyone that's here and back at the factory. They're a little bit too quick for us at the moment. I was giving it everything, but we're getting closer. So we just got to keep pushing. Eventually, hopefully, we'll be in a fight with these guys.
But even the shift from Friday until today seems to be big. I mean, Friday you were saying it's undrivable, and it looked like, especially on entries. But today, you had them in your sights. Obviously, they had a bit of pace on you, but you could still see them at the end.
I could just about see them in the end. Thanks for the safety car. But yeah, honestly, it was our pace was quite good, particularly in the second phase of the stint, and we did a lot of work back in the simulator, but also here to get the setup right. So honestly, I'm ecstatic. I think, as I said, didn't expect this coming into the weekend. It's my second podium of the year, so this feels really special, especially in where I got my first Grand Prix win. I love it here in Montreal, so big thank you to all the Canadians.
Lastly, how's the back feeling?
It's good. I'm back to being young.
Fantastic.
Cheers.
Congrats.
Cheers.
So your top three, Jenson Button asking the questions, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton. And I can tell you, the fans here ecstatic as they flood onto the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Many of them cheering for everybody, but a huge cheer for Lewis Hamilton. As he said, this is his second podium of the season, but maybe the timing of this is just right. Remember, in 2 weeks, we will be at Silverstone, the heartland of British motor racing, for the British Grand Prix. We will have preview shows. We will have as much content as we can possibly throw at you over our summer of sport, with Wimbledon as well, and you name it. BBC 5 Live will be at it. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. The podcast will be coming, so make sure you subscribe, download and listen to it. But Verstappen extends his lead at the top of the championship to 46 points to Sergio Perez's teammate, 49 points to Charles Leclerc. What can Ferrari, what can Charles Leclerc do to fight back and try and wrestle this championship away from Verstappen and Red Bull? We will find out as the championship continues without too much delay.